Warmly welcome to the International Conference on Enriching Industry 5.0, a holistic learning environment.
We are delighted to have you here today.
We take this moment to briefly introduce our guest for the two-day conference, which is jointly organized by the NCT College of Education and Research and Mauritius Institute of Education in collaboration with Homi Bhabha Center of Science Education, TIFR.
Gathered among us are our keynote speakers, Dr. Jayalakshmi Naidu, Professor Dr. Anna Bhattacharya, guest speaker Dr. Indrajit Thopte, and Dr. A.K. Sengupta, who will be joining us a little later. From the organizing team, we have with us Dr. Savita Sabale, Dr. Hemant Besandyal, along with both the Vashi Principal, Ms. Madhuri Srivastava, and Dean of Academics, Ms. Dipandita Desarkar. We are privileged to have with us principals from reputed education institutes, teacher educators, and our dear delegates. We cordially welcome you all.
To mark the inauguration of this event, we will now have the virtual lighting of the lamp. The lighting of the lamp symbolizes the dispelling of darkness and the ushering in of knowledge and enlightenment.
Education restores humility. From humility, one attains character. From character, one acquires wealth. And from wealth, one secures righteousness and thereby joy. A translation from a Sanskrit quote which encompasses the essence of holistic education and the very purpose of this conference.
We now invite Dr. Savita Sabale, Principal of NCT's College of Education and Research and convener of International Conference 5.0 to deliver the welcome address. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and friends, a very warm and healthy good morning to all. It is with great pleasure and honor that I welcome you to the International Conference on the theme Envisioning Industry 5.0, a holistic learning environment. Today, we gather to explore, discuss, and innovate around the transformative potential of Industry 5.0 in the educational sector. This theme is not just a concept, but a vision for the future where technology and human-centric approaches converge to create enriching learning environments. This conference is particularly special because it brings together the unique strengths and perspectives of three reputed institutions, each renowned for their contributions to education. I would like to take a moment to appreciate and recognize these remarkable institutions. Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, TIFR, is a premier institution for research and development in science, technology, and mathematics education. It is India's nodal center for Olympiad programs in mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, astronomy, and junior science. Mauritius Institute of Education, established in 1973, the MIE is a degree awarding teacher education institution of higher learning with a mandate for educational research, curriculum development, and teacher education, responsible for pre-primary, primary, secondary, and tertiary education in the Republic of Mauritius and operating under the aegis of Ministry of Education, Mauritius. NCT's College of Education and Research is under the aegis of Manjra Charitable Trust. Manjra Charitable Trust is a renowned trust in Maharashtra, a social welfare organization whose goal is economic, social, political, and cultural upliftment of masses in Maharashtra by providing quality education. The trust has 45 educational institutions from KG to graduates, postgraduate degrees that impart education in the faculties of arts, science, commerce education, engineering, law, etc. The philosophy of MCT's College of Education is not just preparing qualified teachers, but providing them with enriched curriculum, with a focus on holistic education and integration of interdisciplinary approaches. The dedication of MCT team to fostering creativity and critical thinking is truly inspiring. The collaboration of these prestigious institutions exemplifies the power of unity in diversity. By combining their expertise, resources, and innovative spirit, we are making a significant contribution to global knowledge and paving the way for groundbreaking advancements in education. It represents a significant step forward in fostering international educational partnerships and cultural exchange to explore the integration of advanced technology and new educational paradigms that align with the evolving demands of Industry 5.0. As we embark on this journey together, I am reminded of the profound impact that collaborative efforts and shared knowledge can have on shaping the future. This conference represents a unique opportunity for educators, industry experts, researchers, and business partners, policymakers from around the globe to come together and contribute to a common goal, enriching the educational experiences through holistic, integrated, and innovative practice. This conference also stands out as a pioneering event among the colleges of education affiliated to University of Mumbai. It is a first of its kind initiative that has set a precedent for future educational conferences in the region. Giving you a background, Industry 5.0 signifies a shift from traditional industry practices towards more intelligent, interconnected, and human-focused systems. It emphasizes the importance of sustainable practices, the well-being of individuals, and the role of advanced technologies such as AI, robotics, IoTs, Internet of Things, in creating environments that foster creativity, critical thinking, and lifelong learning. In the context of education, this means reimagining our learning spaces to support not only academic achievements, but also the overall development of students as adaptable, resilient, and forward-thinking individuals. Over the next 2 days, we will have a privilege of hearing from internationally reputed esteemed experts. I acknowledge and thank them for giving their kind consent to be a significant part of this conference. Our keynote speakers and guest speakers are Professor Arnab, Center Director, Homi Bhabha Science Center of Science, Tata Institute for Fundamental Research, winner of awards at national and international level for popularization of science and making it available to masses. Professor Arnab will share his insights on the theme, the wonderful holistic teaching learning environment called home. Professor Naidu has contributed her expertise in teaching, learning, and research in 21st century, embracing fourth industrial revolution. Her contribution in STEAM education at University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa is well recognized. Dr. Indrajit Thopte, with 30 years of experience in child health, both in India and UK, with his highly experienced team, has developed and designed a model of adaptive tools which uses a combination of cutting-edge technology, AI tools, and human intervention to provide child mental health services in India. During his recent visit in India, he has been engaged in summits and has been conducting workshop sessions on mind emotional intelligence, which focuses on 3 Ps: prevention, promotion, and provision of child mental health services in India. We are honored to have you, sir, here. Dr. A.K. Sengupta is a known teacher, researcher, and thinker, a founder and convener of Higher Education Forum, the largest think tank community contributing to capacity building of teachers, and students. Professor Kiran Bujun is the Director of Tertiary Education and Scientific Research at the Ministry of Education, Mauritius. He is researching and exploring a strategic framework for advancing STEAM education. Professor Daniel Gokanga chairs the Department of Educational Foundations, University of Nairobi. He has contributed his expertise, quality and inclusive education, comparative and international education, protective role of education in emergencies, that is EIE program. The expert talks and the theme presentations over 2 days will deliberate on the latest development in educational technologies, sustainable practices in education, and the integration of 1.2 principles into curriculum and administrative procedures. Special focus will be given to topics such as artificial intelligence in education, sustainable education practices, the well-being, and the role of interdisciplinary collaboration in shaping the future for learning. I'm sure participants will leave equipped with innovative ideas, practical tools, and a broader understanding of how to navigate and contribute to the future of education in an increasingly interconnected world. Dear delegates, I encourage you to take full advantage of the networking opportunities presented by this conference, engage with your peers, exchange ideas, and build connections that will extend beyond these sessions. The relationships and the collaborations formed here can lead to groundbreaking projects and initiatives that push the boundaries of what is possible in education. As we move forward, let us remain committed to the vision of Industry 5.0 in education, where technology serves humanity, where learning is personalized and holistic, and where every student is equipped to thrive in the ever-changing world. Together, we can drive the change that is needed to create educational environments that are not only effective, but also inclusive, sustainable, and future-ready. Thank you for being here, for your dedication to education, and for your commitment to innovation. Let us embark on this journey with enthusiasm, curiosity, and a shared purpose. Welcome once again to the conference, and let us make these 2 days fruitful and inspiring. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sabri, for the heartwarming and purpose-filled words which set the tone for today's conference. With this tone, ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor to introduce Dr. Hemant Besandial, Director of Mauritius Institute of Education. Dr. Besandial holds a PhD in mathematics from Curtin University of Technology and several degrees from the University of Pune, India. He also has certifications from the University of Brinton, UK, and the MIE. At MIE, Dr. Besandial has held key roles, including acting head of the School of Science and Mathematics, Quality Assurance Coordinator, and the chair of the MIE Award Committee. His work has significantly influenced educational policies and fostered holistic learning. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Hemant Besandial to deliver the introductory address.
Thank you very much. Dr. Jayanti Noga, PDSM, Chairperson of the MIE Council, who is online with us. Mr. Sarai, Registrar. Dr. Savita Sable, Principal, Manjara Charitable Trust College of Education and Research. Professor Arnab Bhattacharya, Center Director, Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education. Dr. Narendra Deshmukh, Scientific Officer, Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, TIFR. Professor Yashwant Rama, Head School of Science and Maths and local organizer for this conference. Dr. Ramjohn, Professor Nikamwa, colleagues from University of Mauritius, colleagues from MIA. Good morning to you all, local and international delegates. It gives me immense pleasure to address you all today. I extend a warm welcome to the organizers and participants from Mumbai, South Africa, Mauritius, and various other parts of the world to this international hybrid conference titled Envisioning Industry 5.0, a holistic learning environment. This hybrid conference is a testament to the collaborative research efforts between institutions in Mauritius and India, a partnership that began with a project on critical thinking in 2021. This conference brings together a diverse group of experts, scholars, and professionals, providing a unique opportunity to exchange ideas and share knowledge. The conference will cover a variety of sub-themes, including critical thinking for skills development, STEM and artificial intelligence, holistic teaching and learning environments, and universal human values. We are honored to have distinguished speakers who will share their insights and experiences, shedding light on the critical challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Through keynote addresses, guest speaker presentation, and contributions from leading researchers, we aim to create a dynamic and participatory environment for all attendees. We are delighted to announce that this hybrid conference, the first of its kind for MIE, will offer a unique platform for both in-person and online participants to engage, collaborate, and network. Participating in international platforms is a key way to develop a robust research culture. Each of us, especially our faculty at MIE, should seize this opportunity to expand our academic and professional horizons. Thank you all for being a part of this exciting journey. I eagerly anticipate the fruitful exchanges and innovative ideas that will emerge from this hybrid conference. Your participation is key to the success of this event, and I am confident that the collaborative efforts and diverse perspectives will lead to groundbreaking discussions and actionable insights. Together, we can forge new paths and drive progress in the realm of Industry 5.0. I encourage participants to this conference to take full advantage of the networking opportunities, engage in meaningful dialogues, and explore potential collaborations. This conference is not just about sharing knowledge. It is about creating a community of forward thinkers dedicated to advancing our collective understanding and driving innovation. As I conclude my brief remarks, I would like to underscore the invaluable contributions of Professor Rama from MIE, who, along with Dr. Savita Sable and Dr. Narendra Deshmukh, have been instrumental in initiating this hybrid conference. Their dedication have been pivotal in bringing this event to fruition. I wish you all a productive and enriching experience at this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Basin Dayal, for those insightful and motivating. This has truly enriched our ideas on education. Before we begin with our speaker session, please note questions and answers can be noted and asked later. During the question and answer session, you can note down on a sheet or you can post it on the chat box.
Speaking on the lines of education, the constant research and evolution is a significant part of educational development. And on that note, I welcome Dr. Narendra Deshmukh for the collaboration on TIFR. I believe it has always been a challenge to teach science, and I presume most of you would agree. But teaching science classes in pandemic was a different task altogether. Making science easily comprehensible and exciting is a series of constant experimentation.
To highlight the solution to this challenge and share his methods on this topic, the wonderful holistic teaching learning environment called HOPE, we have our keynote speaker, Dr. Arnab Bhattacharya, a renowned scientist and a science communication, a specialization in semiconductor optoelectronics at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai, where he also directs the Homi Bhabha Center of Science Education. Dr. Arnab holds a B.Tech from IIT Mumbai, an MS and PhD from the University of Wisconsin,
and completed an Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship at the Ferdinand Braun Institute in Berlin. He is celebrated for his science outreach initiative, notably founding Chai and White, Mumbai's popular science cafe. As chair of science popularization and public outreach at TIFR, he passionately engages diverse audience with the science talks and experiments. Dr. Other accolades include the 2010 Homi Bhabha Award in Science Education, the 2012 Chevy Rolls-Royce Fellowship, and the 2017 NISA Indira Gandhi Prize for the popularization of science. Beyond science, Dr. Arnab enjoys music, cooking, hiking, photography, and marathon running. We welcome Dr. Arnab on the dais.
Thank you very much. It's indeed an honor to be here. It's indeed an honor to welcome all the dignitaries. And of course, what is can we get to slide one, please? The first one. Just click on slide one and then go to slideshow. Yeah, slideshow. You have to minimize the videos. Okay, great. And hopefully I have control here. Excellent. So, the first thing is, it's great to see an international conference which is truly interacting with countries in the global south. I think that is very important. That is where we need to position ourselves. And I think this is a wonderful thing, absolutely. The other thing is, if I just go by the words that were used by Savita ma'am in her introduction, she talked about adaptability, resilience, thinking. Where did we see this at best during the COVID pandemic? She also talked about personalized learning. You talked about inclusive and sustainable environments. I'm just looking at what you talked about. And what is the most inclusive environment? Our home. Right? And all I want to share with you is a little bit on things we learned during the pandemic, which will hopefully be applicable even beyond the pandemic. Okay. So on that note, let's see if this works. Yep. Okay. So as has already been said, I run Chai and Why. Chai and Why is a forum where we take science out to the public at large, get people out of their labs, take them in the public domain. We've translated a lot of our work into the local language Marathi here, gone out into different areas across Maharashtra where these programs are very popular. Essentially, what we do is we go out and we do experiments. And experiments with things that everybody can find around them at home. That's the key. Okay. And every time I give these presentations, I'm asked, you're at HBCSE, tell us what is science. Okay. And science is our efforts at understanding the world around us. That's it. That could be a world inside the cell in my body. It could be the world around a star in a galaxy far away. We're just trying to systematically understand it. Right? And unfortunately, the way we teach it in school today, we miss this excitement and the curiosity and the inquisitiveness to find things around. That's gone. How do we bring this back? Because unfortunately, people think that science is just mugging up information and formulae. So when I go to schools, this is what they tell me science is. Okay. So that's not what it is. So what do we do? So we need to, if you want to learn science, STEM, whatever, you need to ask questions, you need to do experiments. That's how you provoke curiosity. So how do you do interesting experiments with things available in resource-constrained environments, which is true in most of the countries we are in, right? And even when you do not have an emergency. When you have an emergency, of course you have to do it. But even otherwise, can this be useful? Okay. So I am going to tell you the answer to that is look around at your home. That's it. That's all you need to do. Okay. And the idea is you take something simple that you observe around you and develop it into an experiment where you can ask questions. You can change something. You can measure something. And then you can see if something depends on something else. That is when you start doing you can do very complex science. And of course, if it's at home, you're free to make a mess and have fun. Because if you don't have fun, you will not enjoy it. So I'll give you some ideas. Just a sheet of paper, right? We have hours of experiments you can do with just a sheet of paper. And there's a whole list of them. Oops, sorry. You can just, even I'm at the risk of this great program, I'm going to tear a page. Okay. If you have a sheet of paper, all you need to do, newspaper works well, but any paper should work. They don't want you to tear that. Are you sure I can tear this? No, we haven't yet introduced these people, so I should not tear this. It's okay, I'm not going to tear it in bits. I'm just going to make a small. Relax. This is for a good cause. You do it this way, so nobody sees it. So if I tear it this way, it went that way. If I tear it 90 degrees apart, it's going to go all. So this is a good paper. It's a very good paper, high quality paper. Do it in newspaper. In one direction, it will tear almost straight. In the other direction, it will go really wide. Okay. This happens with any paper. This one is a very, we have to do it many times with this. But newspaper will happen, you can try with the tissue paper also. Tear it in one direction, it will be easy to tear, the other one will go all around the place. And this is just, and then you can ask, why does it happen? It happens because how is paper made? Paper is made from fibers. How do the fibers line up? If the fibers are lining up this way, clearly if you tear along the fibers, it will tear very easily. If you tear across the fibers, it's going to go back and forth. And you get something weird. So there are lots of things you can do with just a piece of paper. You can take another piece of paper, you can just put it between 2 glasses of water and see how much weight can it hold. Typical weight available at home, mobile phone. Can it hold the weight of a mobile? Or is it going to bend this way? Even if I just take, you can see that if I just take 2 glasses of water, if I keep it this way, it's going to bend. If I keep it, you'll have to get a square piece of paper. If I put it this way, this one bends much more. You can see it's much weaker in one direction than in the other direction. So paper is a very interesting object. You can do many things with paper. This is just with dry paper. We haven't wet the paper. If I wet the paper, I can do a whole different series of experiments just with a sheet of paper. Right? And there's a whole video of it if you want to watch. Tiny URL, sheet of paper. Similarly, look at stuff in the kitchen. The kitchen is a wonderful place. It's got the coldest place in the house in the freezer. It's got the hottest place in the house wherever you're cooking. Huge range of temperatures to play with. Huge range of sizes of particles. You have large grains of things. You have small grains of things. And granular matter is always good. And my philosophy is we do all these experiments before we start cooking. That way we don't waste any food and we cook whatever we are doing an experiment with for that day. So you can do a very simple experiment. Right? Here is one. If I have some glasses and I fill the glasses completely, how much space is there? If there are marbles, if there is rice, if there is some small grain like in India, you can take chana or watana, some dal or whatever it is, right? Whatever is your local grain, right? And now the thing, how do you measure the space that's left, right? And there are lots of theories of this and something, but it's very easy to measure the space left. All you do is you take another glass, you fill it with water, and you pour the water, and you see how much of the water went in, and you know that much of the water went in till it was full, so that is the amount of space that is there. Initially, if you ask people to guess, they will guess what is that rice is 90% packed with water, is packed. Once they start pouring water, they see, array, half the water is gone in it. It was hardly 50% packed. Okay. Obviously, you have to do this quickly because the grains will absorb water and swell up and things. But there's a lot of things you can learn just by playing around with things at home. Okay. You can again do a lot of simple experiments. There is a whole list of this. And experiments with foodstuffs are always nice. Children love doing things like, just frying some potatoes dipped in either lemon juice or dipped in something else. You will see how differently they brown. Experiments with chocolate are always nice. Whether it works or fails, people are happy to eat the result. Right? Chocolate, I can tell you more about it. You can ask me later. We can do wonderful experiments. Even string. There are lots of experiments you can do with a bottle of string. I will not go through them right now. Then we can take another attitude of saying, okay, can we connect this to what is there in the textbook? Okay, and this is the out here in Maharashtra. This is the standard 6 textbook, which talks about the solar system. And many places, the solar system looks something like this in a textbook. Okay, unfortunately, this is not just wrong; it's very wrong, very wrong. That's absolutely misleading, and this is the cause of many misconceptions that later on, when kids go to higher grades and go to college and engineering and all that, because they have this picture of the solar system in their mind. So can we make a solar system to scale that actually illustrates the sizes and the distances of planets to scale? Distances we can talk about later, but sizes, here is my solar system. It's made with whatever fruit is available. Typically, you can get this nice fruit. This is a little muskmelon or something, which is or coconut, which is about 10 centimeters in diameter. If your sun is 10 centimeters in diameter, what is the size of your planets? And then you can get everything in the kitchen. You have grains of mustard seed as your earth. You can have similarly, we use rava, whatever that is, semolina, for getting the smaller planets. We use peas or things like that for the slightly larger planets. And for Jupiter and Saturn, you need a marble. But these are now to scale. And similarly, just by folding a paper, I can tell you the distances in the solar system just by taking a sheet of paper and folding it and seeing where the planets lie at the various folds. That's a very simple activity, but it tells you what it is to scale. And that is a very different experience. Now, one should go outside because there's a whole world of stuff that's not in the book which you can experience outside. And this can be anything. This can be just looking at leaves, for example. Often when you look at leaves of plants, they pick up the leaf. You can often find that a lot of people live there. They make homes there. Sorry. So who are these creatures? You can ask lots of things about what you see around. Right? Similarly, if you just follow the trees around, this is a tree, yeah. This is the laburnum tree. It's one of the trees on campus. I have been taking pictures of this tree through the years. Right from this one, it's a beautiful shower of yellow flowers just before the monsoon. And then different trees, even which are a few hundred meters away, often bloom at very different times. Why? Depends on the water they get, right? And you can see every year, is it blooming around the same time or is it shifting with time? What is happening? So there are lots of things one can do by looking around. I am a bit crazy. So let's skip this one. Yeah. So recently we had our elections, right? In elections, you get marked on your finger with indelible ink. You can use that. Yes, I did. You can use that for experiments. So, for example, what is the ink that they put? This indelible ink. What is the chemistry of it? Right now, you can clearly see what I did was I kept my finger covered. I just kept it covered, and it was purple to start with. It's always purple. The ink they apply is purple, but the mark you get is black. When does it become black? Right? If you keep it covered, I've kept it covered for 2 minutes, 35 minutes. I took a bath. 60 minutes, 1 hour, 150 minutes is 2.5 hours. And I got bored. I took it out in the sun. Within 10 minutes, black. Right? And then, of course, I compared it with an early election when I didn't go out in the sun. I only use room lights. It takes much longer with room lights. This means there is some photochemistry going on. What is going on? What is this involved? Okay, if you're as nerdy as I am, I actually scraped my finger. I scraped my finger, I put it in an electron microscope, and I did a chemical analysis for it to show that there is silver in it. And it's a silver compound, and what you're seeing is photochemistry of silver. This year, I've done some experiments, I haven't put it up as yet, where it blackens on your skin before the nail. That's because there are salts on your skin, you're sweating. There is sweat, there is salt, silver chlorides are much more sensitive to light than the silver nitrate that they put in the ink. So there are lots of things you can do with, every opportunity is an opportunity to talk about science. Everything, whether it's election, whether it's, stuff happening around you, whatever it is. And, again, you don't need fancy resources. So I run this program called Chai and Why. I like to drink chai. I make chai every day in the morning. To start making chai, you boil water. We can discuss for an hour what happens when you boil water. But you can do a very simple thing. If you take this hot water and cover it with a lid, there's just a plastic lid kept on a hot cup. After some time, water droplets start condensing on it. If you look at how they are condensing, initially there are very small droplets. These droplets grow, they eat up other droplets, and after some time you'll see that the droplets, there are big droplets and small droplets. Today you have freeware available, kids have mobile phones, they can take pictures of this, they can analyze it, they can do a frequency distribution of droplets. This is a college level experiment. Just with nothing else but covering a cup of chai. Similarly, everybody has a fantastic lab with them, the mobile phone. You have all kinds of sensors on the mobile phone. And people know, for example, at least people who live on the coast know that there are tides twice a day. But everywhere in the world, air pressure varies twice a day. It's not constant, even if there are no storms. But so typically, if you see the lower graph, you'll see that in Mumbai, at 10 p.m. and 10 a.m., you have these peaks of pressure. 4 p.m., 4 a.m., they are something. On a typical day, you'll see these pressure. However, when a cyclone comes, There is a huge low pressure thing. You don't see these anymore because the cyclone's low pressure is so much, it just wipes out all of this. Today, you can study all of this just with the mobile. So this is extremely, you don't need super resources, you can do all of it, you can do it at home. And that's what I wanted to say. And you know what? Going at a higher level, you can even publish this if you're sort of in higher education. Publish this. Yes, I'll take a question if you want, Peter, or whatever now. So during the pandemic, I was working with N95 masks and decontamination. Right? And here is a paper which we published on using heat and humidity to decontaminate things in low resource settings. Okay. And what you will see is a lot of data. These are experiments done at home with sensors. Of course, these are some sensors taped on the masks, but you can see the vessels. They are typical Indian vessels. On an induction cooker, we heated some water, put another vessel inside it. There are some things wrapped up with the dupatta, plate is put around it, etc., etc.
जी को बोलता मैं आ गई हूँ निशा और निशा सर जी को बोलना आई कार्ड आ गए डाउनलोड कराने के पर
Can people mute? Yeah. Okay. So now this is, you can do one mask. What are you going to do? Multiple masks at a time. What do you do? Right? I will show you my experimental setup, which is published in the paper. That's my experimental setup. Okay. And this is published in a journal paper, and that's the data that I've taken on an idli cooker. Okay. So you should not say that you need fancy resources to be able to publish papers. You can do it with some creativity with whatever you have. Okay. And I will stop here so we can take some questions if you want. But the summary is, this is another of my favorite experiments. If you eat an orange, every time you eat an orange, wait, I have control here. You know, we used to take when we were kids, we used to take the peel and squeeze it in somebody's eyes. Why? Because it burns. Right? Squeeze it into a candle flame or a flame of a diya. You'll see it really burns. You can get a nice big fireball from it. For me, from TIFR, I'm at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. For me, it's an effort to find the fun in the fundamental research. And once you try doing experiments with things at home, you'll find that you're doing experiments with whatever you can find, it becomes addictive. And share this excitement with others. And thank you very much for your attention. Sorry for tearing your page. Okay, if there are questions, I'm happy to take questions. I am on time.
Can you ask Mauritius?
So, people in Mauritius, do you have any questions? We can stop sharing so that people can, we can just see everybody and.
Good morning.
Good morning, Hemant. Yes.
H1.
Yeah. It's not a question, it's just to share, because this is actually what we do here at the Mauritius Institute of Education, because we are a teacher training institution. This is what actually we do to get teachers to develop that notion of using everyday life, sort of things in their immediate environment in order to get kids to critically reflect on the concept, relate that concept with what appears in the textbook. But unfortunately, I don't know what is the situation in India, but unfortunately, it's really difficult, very difficult to get teachers to think out of the box and engage students to think critically by relating everyday life experiences with the concept. And I agree with whatever you presented. This is exactly what we do, but on the other side, this is not what is happening. So your views, please.
Yeah, so I completely, I think the others in the room here who have a lot more experience than me, Narendra, I'm here. I think the problem is the same everywhere. It's very difficult to get the teachers to buy into what you want to do, what you think is probably people often think that this is too simple. This is too, they're not willing to believe that something as simple can actually pay dividends in learning. People increasingly want to have something more fancy, something which may not really lead to the learning outcomes may not be that something, but it's very difficult. I agree. The biggest problem is to convince teachers that this is worth it. So yes, I think there is no dearth of resources developed in many places across the world, no dearth of something, but how do we get the teacher community to engage better? Well, maybe it's happening in a small way. Let's see. I'm more positive.
Thank you. Hello, next one. No, please. I have my colleague.
What's coming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, good morning, Mumbai. Good morning, Mumbai.
Good morning, Chris.
It's Anwar Hamjoon from the Science Education Department. I think you have touched something which is very pertinent, and it is something which is shared across the world. That is, science is not just a process of memorization of scientific information and formulae. It's more than that. But my personal view is that we are not addressing the main issue, which is informing the way we are teaching the sciences across the world. And the issue is the assessment modality, the assessment thing. What do we assess? And how do we assess the science? I think that's the question which we need to ask. Because if we will continue to assess scientific information, scientific facts equation only, and keeping aside all the science processes, all the scientific thinking, the scientific skills, we are not going to change anything, I'm sorry to say. Thank you.
Yes, actually, I agree with this. I know that some of us who are on the India at least has a new educational policy based on which there is a new curriculum framework, based on which we are trying to rewrite the science books at the national level, at the state level. A few of us are involved in this. And one of the biggest problems is how do you evaluate children to figure out whether the learning outcomes have actually translated into something that they have understood, whether we have met the certain competencies that the curriculum wants us to ensure that they meet. And the other thing is, again, it's a matter of people are so used to setting some kind of examination papers at the end of the year, it's very difficult for them to change suddenly into a modality that requires them to see how are kids exploring and finding out. And this is a real problem, and I do not think there is an easy solution to it. And I know that at least out here we have really been unable to make any major change towards this. Narendra might have another view from Maharashtra, but I don't know. This is the national view. I think we should move on.
Thank you.
Any further questions, we can take this up during the question answer session. With that, science is an effort to understand the world around us systematically. I think I'll hold on to that thought when I move into my classrooms. And with that, with whatever difficulties we are facing today, I believe that leaves just a big area where we can again work on and develop ourselves. So this is certainly going into my classroom practices, and more so, what an engaging way to learn science. Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya. We are honored to have with us Professor Dr. Jayalakshmi Naidu from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, who will be giving the keynote address. Dr. Jayalakshmi Naidu is an associate professor of mathematics education at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. She earned Canon Collins 2005 and Sandpad 2009 scholarships and received the UKZN Emerging Researcher Award in 2012. In 2018, she was named one of the top 30 most published researchers and top 10 most published women researchers at UKZN's College of Humanities. An NRF rated researcher She published a book on 21st century teaching and the fourth industrial revolution in 2021 and was one of the top 3 most published researchers in UKZN School of Education in 2022. Her research focuses on technology and visualization in STEM education, pedagogical strategies, sustainable development, social justice, race, language in STEM, indigenous knowledge systems, and STEM teacher professional development. Professor Naidu will be speaking on Envisioning Industry 5.0, exploring personalized, collaborative, and sustainable education, sustainable technology-based education. Industry 5.0 blends advanced technology with human creativity and critical thinking, promoting personalized, collaborative, and sustainable solutions for the holistic development in the digital age.
This presentation highlights a holistic educational environment with Industry 5.0. Evidence-based research supports reshaping educational environment to promote sustainable development and meet future demands. I welcome Dr. Naidu to address our delegates.
Thank you, Chair, for the warm welcome. Good morning to all present online and in person, all protocol observed. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. It is a pleasure and privilege to collaborate and share my research with you all today. I will now start my presentation and share my screen. Envisioning Industry 5.0, exploring personalized, collaborative, and sustainable technology-based education. As academics, educators, practitioners, researchers, industry pioneers, policymakers, and students, our role within the fifth industrial revolution is to continue being lifelong students. Industry 5.0 announces the opportunity of working with technology and machines. The advancement of industrial revolutions have resulted in substantial changes in how we live, learn, and work. Each stage has shaped educational environments, and Industry 5.0 integrates human creativity and critical thinking to create more personalized, collaborative, and sustainable solutions to support the holistic development of individuals in the digital age. Thus, it offers the vision of an educational environment that is adaptive, inclusive, and future-ready. It signifies a transformative shift that highlights collaboration, fosters sustainability, and enhances personalization. This presentation explores the need to rethink our educational environments to support our students in developing technological skills, ethical reasoning, creativity, adaptive thinking that encourages social responsibility and sustainability. Thus, this presentation explores the notions of sustainable education, personalized learning systems, and collaborative educational environments. Subsequently, the presentation explores the concept of the holistic educational environment within Industry 5.0 by showcasing evidence-based research that encourages the reshaping of education to meet future demands. So here are our industrial revolutions. So let's look at each one. In the first, here we moved our dependence from animals and our effort to the use of fossil fuels, water, steam, and mechanical power this enabled. The second was about electricity, wireless and wired communication, and new ways of generating power. The third was about digital systems, communication, and rapid advances in computing power. The fourth represents novel methods in which technology becomes rooted within our society and even our bodies. When we envision Industry 5.0, important concepts come to mind, and these include human-centeredness, sustainability, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, virtual reality, robotics. So what do we actually mean when we say human-centered? It is essentially lecturers, academics, teachers designing tasks with a focus on the student's needs. It places the student at the center of the design process. We then explore the usability, the experience, trustworthiness, avoiding harm, and accessibility. Essentially, we're focusing on the student's needs and the student's behaviors and experiences. We want to try and deeply understand this so that we can create effective solutions catering to the challenges and benefits, the strengths and desires. There is therefore the shift from content-centered learning to human-centered learning. So when we talk about sustainability, this is a social goal. It's for all of us so that we can coexist with the environment over a long time. It supports ecological, human, economic health, and vitality. So education for sustainable development is quite important because it allows us to acquire the knowledge, the skills, the attitudes, and values necessary to shape a sustainable future. Of course, many of our teachers are already currently doing this, in that they embed sustainability into their classroom practices. The smallest thing, like turning off lights, computers when not needed, making full use of paper, materials, other resources, reducing, recycling, reusing in the classroom, empowering and ensuring a circular economy. This will assist in sustainability. With artificial intelligence, this is the ability of a computer to perform tasks that are commonly associated with human characteristics. We are currently using it in education. We are using it, our students are using it, and the most common one that we recently been researching and discussing and debating is ChatGPT. We also use plagiarism software, Turnitin, and even in science and maths, we use simulations via the PhET models. So this is something we are already doing in the 4IR, and we can envision what this would mean as we move to the Industry 5.0. When we look at the Internet of Things, we are already using everyday objects where they send and receive data, where we connect to internet and other devices, our phones, our computers, having this hybrid conference, our appliances at home, industry, travel. This is something that is already there. But as we envision Industry 5.0, we have to think about more advanced technologies and how are we going to embrace them and accept them into our daily lives. In terms of virtual reality, this creates an immersive and interactive simulation of a real or imagined environment. Virtual reality allows students to visualize, to manipulate, and test systems in a realistic and interactive way. And some examples we are currently using in education include virtual field trips to landmarks, to monuments, simulating different geographical regions and climates, enhancing STEM education. So we already incorporated this in some of our educational environments. But actually, as we envision Industry 5.0, we are trying to promote this in all our educational environments. And I know we're going to talk about funding, We're going to talk about social justice issues, and we will come to that later on in this presentation. So, dear colleagues, as we envision Industry 5.0, we need to understand it's a focus on a collaboration between humans and machines. There's a focus on human-centeredness, on sustainability, and resilience. The goal is to create sustainable products and services to ensure sustainability for the future. And amidst these innovations and transformations, as the creators, consumers, mentors of knowledge production, we need to discern the role that we will play within Industry 5.0. We need to encourage and promote notions of holistic education. So we are already aware of what holistic education means, but just to give you a general overview as we move forward, it's essentially an approach that nurtures the entire individual, the entire student, spiritually, emotionally, cognitively, socially. So this kind of education does not only focus on academic achievements. It's about the growth of the entire child, the entire being. So methods that we would use or we are using to foster holistic learning is self-guided learning. We become facilitators and we guide our students. Community schools, we interact with communities and parents, interdisciplinary coursework, and experiential learning, where learners experience hands-on inquiry-based as they work, as they study, as they learn. And this, in fact, creates holistic education and an holistic learning environment. It's a supportive learning environment. It enhances communication, motivation. It builds up stronger student-teacher relationships, increased respect, increased compassion, empathy, empowering students, and having a comprehensive understanding. So how do we envision Industry 5.0 and how do we teach in Industry 5.0? Essentially, we work together. We collaborate, very much like what we're doing today, where we're sharing research, sharing ideas. And then we brainstorm these ideas on how best to support our students in envisioning and embracing Industry 5.0. We need to envision and embrace the possibilities, whether it's in healthcare, in education, in industry, within society, safeguarding our data. We need to think about the possibilities of Industry 5.0. So, yes, we're already using smart education in our classrooms currently, in our university environments, we are using it. But as we envision and embrace Industry 5.0, we need to think and move beyond just teaching with the chalkboards, interactive boards, smart boards. We need to now think about advanced, innovative technologies being integrated in teaching and learning. So this is where it's important to engage with evidence-based research. Because in developing countries, not all students can access the necessary tools, resources, or participate equally in technology-based educational environments. And in our higher education environments in developing countries like my own, we have socioeconomic barriers, insufficient technology, limited resources, inadequate infrastructure. Therefore, research about embracing and envisioning Industry 5.0 is important to start the collaborations, to start the discussion, to start the sharing of how we can move forward. Today I am going to be discussing personalized learning systems, collaborative educational environments, as sustainable education. And I will support these discussions by showcasing research that has been published, and I will talk about the learnings from this research and how I'm taking it forward so that we can share and collaborate moving forward. So we must understand that every research that we do, we undertake, we publish, ethical considerations are very important. So ethical clearance has been approved for all the articles, informed consents were approved and given out, and coding was used to ensure that participants had maintained their confidentiality and privacy. So in the first two articles I would like to briefly discuss, this is where I focused on personalizing the learning system. So in the first article, it was essentially about flipping learning and embracing connectivism, and this was during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the next article was exploring, okay, if you're flipping learning, if you're promoting connectivism in response to COVID, what about our indigenous knowledge and what about our culturally based activities? How does this make a difference? And how can we as educators personalize teaching and learning to cater for these types of scenarios? So when I looked at the findings, I tried to ensure that there was research relevant. And both the research articles that I'm discussing brought about the relevance of the context in which the research was situated. IKS, Indigenous Knowledge Systems, culture, technology were included in mathematics. And how did this then bring about personalization? Using technology catered for students' needs because we needed to personalize learning spaces during the COVID-19 pandemic. Learners needed to be given the ability and the flexibility to learn as they went along. We uploaded information, we recorded our lectures so they could access this in their own time, and learning was therefore paced. And within the Indigenous knowledge system, different voices were considered. We personalized learning because knowledge was exchanged, and the value of IKS and culture was encouraged. In terms of the curriculum, this led to a transformation. Our curriculum then expanded to include Indigenous knowledge, culture, and online teaching and learning. Traditionally, the institution that was the focus of the study always had contact mode of delivery. But now we had to change courses, we had to change modules and included an online and eventually a hybrid way of teaching and learning. So how does this lead or even encourage holistic education? The study explored other aspects besides academic growth, besides student growth in terms of achievement. It addressed the students' social, ethical, and cultural needs. The value of Indigenous knowledge was acknowledged and promoted. And besides, during COVID-19, all students, all educators had a social and ethical responsibility to themselves and their families to be safe and not to attend face-to-face for the fear of the spread of the coronavirus disease. Therefore, by promoting the use of technology, promoting the use of connectivism, this addressed these social and ethical needs. In the next two articles that I focus on, this is where I focus on collaborative educational environments. So the first article that I would like to share is the one about maths teachers' experiences, the use of technology-based pedagogy, and fourth industrial revolution. So whilst I focused on these experiences, now that I have the experiences, I then move further, more research to check or to investigate and explore the implications of these experiences. So here again, I looked at the research relevance. Yes, the research was relevant. It brought together an understanding of online and technology-based pedagogy during the COVID-19 pandemic as well as after. Personalization was also ensured during this research because learning was paced through the use of recordings, uploading information, but more specifically, collaboration was encouraged. Now, during COVID-19, we could not meet face to face. So this collaboration occurred online, where little virtual communities of practices were encouraged. We had discussion forums and WhatsApp groups. And yes, there were issues of equity and access. Fortunately, the students at this university were provided with laptops, data for internet access, as well as access to zero-rated websites. We actually partnered with industry to be able to provide all these devices and tools and data. So learners and students were encouraged to communicate with each other. And it wasn't only about academics. It was social and personal, mental health, discussions, just to be able to talk to somebody to discuss and share what was happening in their lives during COVID-19. In terms of the curriculum, here again, our curriculum needed to be revised to include collaboration, to include technology-based education, to include virtual communities of practice. And this also helped promote holistic education because the study addressed students' social, emotional, and ethical needs. Students have an ethical and social responsibilities to protect themselves from the COVID-19, and therefore they used virtual communities of practice. They shared, they mentored each other, they helped each other cognitively and socially. And the last bit of research that I talk about, it's the most recent research where I focus on sustainable education, sustainable development. So essentially, I look at technology-based pedagogy and about sustainable development. And based on this research, it led me to further research to explore more about technology-based teaching methods. Here again, I looked at the research relevance because whatever we do, whatever we research, it has to be relevant to our context, to our field, to our students. It has to bring about some sort of change or difference. So in terms of the relevance, it addressed a real problem. Sustainability is a problem. We are going to have a problem if we don't learn to be using more sustainable practices in teaching, in learning, in our daily lives. It advances knowledge and scholarship. It adds new knowledge to the field, and it bridges academia with practice. Whatever's happening in academia can be now enforced in the real world and real life situation. So in terms of promoting sustainable maths, different strategies were revealed to be considered for rural settings. We had to use different ways of teaching and learning in a rural setting. And we have many schools in rural settings in South Africa, and we had to cater for this. We had to ensure we encourage inclusivity and sustainability. And this actually produced or gave us more research possibilities concerning sustainable education. And I will talk about this a little later, about maker spaces and translanguaging. In terms of curriculum, our curriculum was critically examined and expanded. We included sustainability, we included Industry 4.0, and included how we could move forward to promote sustainable education. So this was included both at undergrad and postgrad level. Holistic education was promoted because the studies explored everything, including social, ethical, and future needs. So although the students were achieving their academic requirements that the university imposed on them, we were still ensuring that their social development, their ethical responsibility, and their future needs were met through this research. So what were the key learnings from the published research? Essentially, it is about curriculum transformation, promoting skill development, integration of technology, teacher roles, professional development and training, educational accessibility, equity, collaboration with industry, addressing issues of social justice, and informing future research possibilities. Essentially, when we're looking at curriculum transformation, we need to transform to include interdisciplinary learning. Education systems need to integrate STEM with STEAM. We need to integrate sciences with arts, humanities, and social sciences, because this approach actually fosters critical thinking, creativity, and problem-solving skills. Our curriculum needs to emphasize sustainability. Courses will need to be revised to increase the focus on sustainability, ethics, and social responsibility. It is in this way that students and teachers will learn more about sustainable practices, the impact of technology on society, and how to create solutions that benefit both people and the planet. It is in this way notions of holistic education will be promoted. In terms of skill development, we need to promote human-centric skills. Industry 5.0 highlights the importance of soft skills, empathy, communication, teamwork, ethical reasoning, ethical decision-making, social responsibility. Educational environments will need to focus on developing these skills alongside technical and technological proficiency. Lifelong learning needs to be promoted. There's going to be rapid technological advancements, and this would require continuous learning and upskilling. We will need to promote a culture of lifelong learning by providing flexible and accessible learning opportunities. Thus, notions of holistic education will be supported. In terms of integration of technology, yes, we already have technology in our educational environments, but we need to consider more advanced technologies. For example, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and simulation. By using them, this will assist in enhancing the teaching and learning experiences, personalized education. AI-driven tools can offer personalized learning experiences by adapting to individual students' needs, questions, learning styles, and paces. Of course, we would need to be there to guide the use of this AI tool. The use of AI can also help address diverse learning requirements and improve educational outcomes. In this way, notions of holistic education will be advanced. Our roles as teachers, educators, practitioners, these will all evolve. We'll transition from traditional to facilitators of learning. I know many of us are already doing this, but not all teachers are okay with moving from the traditional teaching to facilitation. So we will have to guide teachers, academics, educators on the benefits of this. Because as we guide our students to explore and apply knowledge, they will become more creative and more collaborative. But of course, this evolving role will require more professional development or ongoing professional development. And this ongoing professional development will help us stay current with technological advancements, innovative teaching methodologies, and what is happening out there in other countries, what works, what is a challenge. By us sharing and staying current and abreast with what's happening, we will become better at what we do. So the training programs will also need to focus on advanced technologies, integrating it, promoting sustainability, and in this way, notions of holistic education will be encouraged. We will now need to think about global access to education, encouraging global zero-rated education call centers, ensuring that inclusive education is accessible. And we need to ensure we have technologies to support inclusive education. And thus, the notions of holistic education will be advanced. Collaboration with industry is so important, as we saw at our institution during COVID-19. This collaboration will assist and support educational educational institutions, and this collaboration will need to be more prevalent. It's happening already, but we need to have it more prevalent. This will also ensure us to have more curricula that is relevant and aligned with what's happening in the real world and in the workforce.
Level 5, I will just.
So this will also include internships, co-op programs, and industry-led workshops. Education will focus on practical, real-world applications of knowledge, and this will help us prepare our students for the future. In this way, we can encourage holistic education. But in all of this, we need to think for ourselves about the social justice implications within our own context. So essentially, we'll have to talk about or think about the digital divide, inclusive curriculum, teacher training and support, the impact of the workforce, funding issues, community, parental involvement, mental health and well-being, and this will lead to future research possibilities. The current research that was actually spearheaded because of the findings from sustainability and IKS is the new project that we're working on in terms of Indigenous knowledge and climate change. And what we're currently working on is translanguaging versus code switching. So in our classrooms, we have diverse learners, different language ability levels, different cultures. And we are now looking at how translanguaging, meaning the social and cognitive approach to teaching and learning, will compare with the code switching we've been using currently, which is a social linguistic approach. The next research that we're currently doing is maker spaces, and this evolved out of a project that involves rural teachers, STEM teachers, and we are actually mentoring these teachers. So here we realize there's maker spaces. These are spaces that are collaborative environments, and they foster creativity, innovation, and skill development. And here in these spaces, teachers come together and they create or invent things using traditional crafts or technology, and they use them as resources, and they share these resources. So this is very interesting, and we're currently working on it. So I come towards the end of my presentation, where we look at the implications of Industry 5.0. It will significantly reshape education, prepare students to traverse a rapidly changing world with a focus on sustainability, ethics, and social impact. It will promote interdisciplinary learning, highlight human-centric skills, incorporate advanced technologies, encourage lifelong learning, endorse educational accessibility and equity. In conclusion, by us embracing advanced technologies while maintaining a human-centric approach, education can evolve to meet the demands of an increasingly complex world. The holistic learning environment fosters technical and technological proficiency and an emotional and ethical competency that are necessary for the future workforce. So as academics, educators, practitioners, researchers, industry pioneers, policymakers, and students, we need to carefully consider the implications of embracing and envisioning Industry 5.0 within our own context. Along with these implications, we need to be mindful of the issues related to social justice. But we can collaborate, we can share ideas and use evidence-based research to advance further context-based research possibilities so that we are ready to envision and embrace Industry 5.0. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naidu, for such an essential presentation that highlights the demand and the type of supply we need to adapt in today's education system. Our next session features Dr. Indrajit Thopte, a renowned child psychiatry expert from NHS UK and co-founder of Envisioning. Dr. Thopte will discuss enabling holistic inclusive environment.
Dr. Envisioning is a consultant pediatrician based in Scarborough, UK. He's affiliated with the York and Scarborough Teaching Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, where he specializes in pediatrics with a particular focus on oncology. Dr. Thopte is a part of a team providing care for children with cancer, working closely with the oncology team in Leeds to deliver local support and treatment. His role involves collaborating with the community nursing teams to manage the needs of young patients, including those requiring blood tests and care during febrile neutropenia episodes. We are privileged to have you as a guest speaker. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Thopte. Just a minute.
Morning, everybody. I'd firstly like to thank Aditi Deshmukh, Dr. Sabre, and their team for giving this opportunity to me to be able to present here in what is very much an educational conference. But it's very heartening to know that they have given the opportunity to a clinician to come here and talk about how important addressing children's health, both physical and mental health, is essential in them achieving their full potential in their education. Just a few clarifications. I think there might have been a bit of a mistake. I am a pediatrician with an interest in child psychiatry. I don't do oncology. And I previously worked in York and Scarborough, but I now work in Bradford. But yeah, my interests at the moment are with child development issues, including things like autism, as well as children's mental health problems. I'd like to set up a disclaimer before my talk, is that I'm actually heading a child mental health project, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. If people want to find out about that, they can contact Dr. Sabre and the team. We have very recently put up a film on YouTube. It's just been 2 days, and I'm quite heartened by the response it's got, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on in this talk. I am very much a hardcore clinician. I don't have a research background. I'm not that clever, but I've got these almost now 34 years of experience of working with children, both in India as well as in the UK. I always like to, do my talks giving real life examples, because that's how I think things, people tend to remember it better. Again, because of the lack of time, we need to stick to time, so I might not give you too many examples, but that's how I like to do. Again, another disclaimer is I'm very much of a technophobe. I always struggle with technology, and I'm glad there's a very efficient team here to help me out. And it's important message that I give to my children as well as my patients is that you cannot be good at everything. Yeah? There will be certain things you're really good at, and there will be certain things you're not good at. And the earlier you recognize that and work with it, the better. Yeah. Then for people, I mean, nobody here knows me very much, but about up until about 6-7 years ago, most people who knew me would know me as a very humble, diplomatic person. I have had to change in order to promote what I want to promote. Yeah? And there's less of too much thinking and worrying about things. If I say this or if I say that, this and that might happen. Sometimes you think if this is right or you think it is right, let's just say it. And I do have a sense of humor which is slightly different to what most people have, and it can get me into trouble. Like for example, for this conference, I might have said that I'm actually the only doctor in this conference.
Correct.
There are lots of clever people here, but I'm the only doctor is what people would understand. A layperson would think of as a doctor. And although this last set applies mainly to parents, but there are, I mean, amongst the audience, there are people who are parents as well, despite being educators, is don't jump to any conclusions. If I say such and such thing is associated with autism, doesn't automatically mean if a child does one of those 15 things, then that equates to autism. And going back to the technology issue, it's very important as a doctor as well that you recognize your limitation. As a senior clinician, when I have junior doctors working with me, the first thing I want to know about them is, will this person call me if a patient is deteriorating, and will they call me in time? Or will I have to be awake in bed thinking, are they going to call me or not? Because I want to be called when I need to come in. This slide kind of sums it up, that messing up your children forever is as easy as riding a bike. Getting it right takes a lot of effort, both on the part of the parents as well as the educators. Getting it wrong is very, very easy. I wish I came across this poem from Khalil Gibran, who is an American Lebanese poet about children only about 2 or 3 years ago. Had I read it before, I think I wouldn't have needed over 30 years of experience in understanding children, because he has just summarized it in this one poem. Yeah, in that our children, they are not ours. Yeah, they are a life's longing for itself. They have come through us, but they don't belong to us. Yeah? We can give them our love, but we shouldn't be putting our thoughts into them. We shouldn't be living our life through them, because I couldn't be a Virat Kohli. Maybe now I want to make my son into one, even he might not even be interested in cricket. Yeah? We house their bodies, but not their souls. And life has to move forwards, not backwards. And the last 2 sentences are very important, not just for parents, but for educators, that you are the bows from which these children are set forth as arrows. And for them to go forward, parents and educators need to look after themselves. There's got to be some self-care, because if you don't look after yourself, you will not be of any use to anybody else. Who else can say it better than Nelson Mandela on any issue in the world? Yeah, that there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way it treats its children. And education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Now, these are some important dates. Very interesting when I was reading that people started recognizing, after adult psychology, they started learning about animal psychology before they started talking about child psychology. Yeah. Henry Maudsley was, there is a Maudsley Hospital in London named after him, which is where I studied when I went to do the course in child psychiatry. And he's written this book about, mental health, in which there is only one chapter that is dedicated to children, which is called Insanity of Early Life. A very important date, especially for educators all over the world, is that in 1880, in UK, there was an act which made sending children to school compulsory. Initially, it was up until the age of 11, then they gradually increased it, and now they say 15. But you have to send your children to school. And if you don't, legal action can be taken if there is no proper reason not to send. And the reason this date is important is
There's a chat coming.
Can we just put this there? This is the mic.
you just want me to talk louder.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
that's fine. No,
actually it is not.
yeah, I'm very loud, don't worry. No,
That's
no,
the mic.
yeah. Sorry, so 1880 is an important date with education in the UK. And what they realized is once education became compulsory, the children who were not that academic and were struggling, but they were expected to achieve just like everybody else, then the mental health issues started coming to the fore because pressure was being put on them to achieve when they were not capable of achieving without any extra help. Leo Kanner is probably the first person to be identified as a child psychiatrist. And he's, and even now, maybe this needs to be even closer.
I think it's crazy because they could hear me. How could they not hear you?
Others can hear. Divya ma'am, can you hear?
Yes, we can hear clearly.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear.
We can hear.
Let's continue. Maybe that's right.
Maybe that side.
Even Mauritius also.
Can hear.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's continue.
यहाँ पर ठीक है.
So Leo Kanner is considered as the first child psychiatrist in the world, and he introduced the specialty of child and adolescent psychiatry. And he's also the one, credited with coming up with the term of autism spectrum disorder in the 1940s. Erna Hawk actually looked at child mental health issues in India in the 50s and 60s, but it's yet to come up to its, get the recognition that it needs. Professor Sir Michael Rutter is probably considered the father of modern child psychiatry. And he conducted this very interesting research on a small island in the UK, where the population remained constant. They didn't move in and out that much. So you could study them over a 5-year period where he worked out the incidence of child mental health problems. And by mental health problems, I don't mean only depression and eating disorders and all the obvious ones, but even like unhappy children who were refusing to go to school, etc., etc. WHO expert committee conducted research on mental health issues all over the world in 1976. And it was interesting that people in India and Sri Lanka and countries like that said, yes, there are mental health issues, but we can deal with it as a family. We don't really need help from anybody else. Yeah, and I'll come back to that. 2010 is an important date, especially with all the social media, issues that we come across now. And in 2010 came the iPhone 4, where you had a forward-facing camera, so you could look at yourself, and then you could compare how you look compared to somebody else. You had the like and the dislike button, so everybody could know who liked it, and you could retweet and forward it. And once it's gone, then it's gone. Even if you try and delete it or anything, it's gone. And like I said, Professor Sir Michael Rutter looked at the incidence of child mental health issues in that island in UK. And in the 60s and 70s, the incidence was 1 in 9, which is as common as asthma. Yeah. But after COVID, it's not surprising that the incidence went up to 1 in 6. Very quickly through my story and journey and what my hopes are for the future. So it's my own childhood experiences in my personal life and in my school life, where I know people who know me think it's very clever, but this humility comes in where I think it's not the cleverness, it's the hard work, the focus, and most importantly, the emotional intelligence, recognizing how to, the people's skills rather than the IQ. Growing up as a child, I was absolutely terrified of needles. So I surprised myself when I thought I want to do medicine. And I think that stems from the fact that I like to help people. I didn't become a doctor to make money. I became a doctor because I wanted to help people. And I realized that growing up as a child, I was fortunate that I was quite academic, but I could see children around me who were struggling. And some of them, it was very obvious, they had a bad stammer or their vision was so poor, but they were expected to study just like me without any extra help and just get on with it. I still remember this boy who had a very bad stammer. I used to feel, please don't talk, let me talk for you, because I know once you start talking, you will struggle and people around you will make fun of you. And so then when I did pediatrics. Once I got admission to medical school, I knew right from the very first day that I wanted to do pediatrics. And if in India there was the option of doing child psychiatry as a specialty, I am pretty certain that is what I would have done. But I then went to the UK to do this course in child and adolescent psychiatry, because even then in the early 90s, this course was designed specifically for pediatricians and psychologists from what used to be called the third world countries, of which India was one then, where child psychiatry doesn't exist as a separate entity. So they wanted to train people to deal with children's mental health issues. And this has helped me not only, it's even helped me in my professional life in the UK, because of having this dual training in pediatrics and child mental health. It has helped me get the jobs in the places that I wanted to, rather than just accepting whatever job was available. It's helped me provide holistic care to my patients. And now I feel it's probably payback time, because I've done this, I've learned, I've got this experience. And the reason for which I went to the UK, now it's probably time to pay back in India. And there were two reasons I stayed back in the UK. Is one, because I had taken a loan to go and do this course, and it would have been easier to pay back the loan in pounds than in rupees. Yeah. And the other thing was the NHS, the main ethos of care in the UK is you get care that is free at the point of contact. Even if you need a drug that costs £1 million, if you need it, you get it. You don't have to think about who's going to pay for it, because that will come through the taxes. This is a very important statistic to remember, or the numbers, because if somebody is diagnosed with a mental health issue when they are like 25 or 30 years old, so the diagnosis might be made then, but if you ask the parents or the teachers who were educating this child, they would tell you that they started recognizing the signs and the symptoms by the time that young person was 14 years old. So in half of adult mental health issues, the symptoms are there by 14. And in about 75%, they're there by 25 years of age. Again, these numbers are from a long time back, where the number of child psychiatrists in high-income countries is about 1.2 per 100,000. Whereas in the middle, and again, India was considered as the middle or low income, there are less than 0.1. Everybody has role models. Yeah, we all do. That's how we sort of move up in life. So I had my parents. My father was the kindest and gentlest person. I mean, everybody will say that about their parents, but if you ask anybody, the moment I tell them my father's name, if they knew him, the first word that will come out is he was a very nice person. Yeah. Obviously, my mom couldn't then offer to be nice, because you can't just be nice. Yeah. But I learned the firmness and the consistency and the focus from her. If you want to achieve something, you put your head down and you just get on with it. Yeah. You might achieve it, you might not achieve it, but you just deal with it. A very important thing for everybody to know is that within your immediate family, if everybody lives a normal life expectancy, the person that you will know the longest in your lifetime is your sibling. So your brother or your sister, not your parent. Yeah. And therefore try very hard not to fall out with your siblings, especially over matters like property, etc. My teachers had the greatest influence on my career, George. Like I said, I was terrified of needles. Yeah. So I surprised myself, and that is mainly because of both my botany and zoology teachers in my junior college. Till then, I wasn't even thinking about medicine. Another reason I wanted to become a doctor is because my own pediatrician was the gentlest, kindest person. He was not just interested in what the symptoms of the patients were. He was interested, how long did you have to travel to come and see me? How much did you walk? How many buses did you change? And now you're sitting in this queue to come and see me. I was also fortunate in India, in Pune, to be taught pediatrics by who I consider to be the goddess of pediatrics, because there was just knowledge pouring out of everywhere. And the most important thing to learn from her, again for you as educators, is she was so keen on teaching to spread them, not keeping all the knowledge to herself, because you realize that the more you teach other people, the more you are likely to remember what you're teaching them. And the other thing is, it will lead to some discussion between you and that person where you might learn something from them. Yeah. And then obviously there was Professor Sir Michael Rutter, who I said was like the father of modern child psychiatry. The reason I put that little asterisk there is all the names that come up from now on. If there's an asterisk, they actually taught me on the course when I was in there. I was fortunate, you know, these are like the world experts. I would be very surprised if there's anybody in any audience who doesn't know somebody within their family friend circle who has a child with some kind of mental health issue. There will without a doubt be somebody that you know. In the Western world, you branch out to do child psychiatry after you do mainly adult psychiatry. I think in the US, you might branch out to do it after doing pediatrics, but mainly it is adult psychiatry for 3 years. And then you go and you do exclusively child psychiatry. Then you don't see adult patients after that. Yeah? And the beauty of pediatrics is the age range is 0 to 18. But the illnesses that affect a 4-year-old child, both physical and mental, are completely different to a 14-year-old. Whereas something that affects a 55-year-old man, more or less the same things affect a 65-year-old. But in children, although it's just 18 years, it is very, very varied and vast, which I think is the beauty of pediatrics. And the important thing is when they do classify children's mental health disorders, they don't just make a diagnosis of what the mental health issue is. They take the child's IQ into account because, you know, if they're not at a developmental stage to achieve something, then you can't give them that diagnosis because they are so far behind with their IQ. So it's a multi-axial diagnosis. It doesn't just depend on the symptoms. And I feel very strongly that to be able to talk to children, to counsel them, you do need to have the experience of doing that. You need to know how it's done and you need formal training in that. Because again, how you talk to a 4-year-old is different to how you talk to a 14-year-old. You might have a 4-year-old who is mature enough, like a 7-8-year-old, then you have to pitch the communication to that level rather than to talk to them like a 4-year-old. People might ask now, he's living in the UK for nearly 30 years, like what does he know about what happens in India? So it's interesting that this year, I have spent exactly half my life in India as well as the UK. Yeah, so I didn't go as a very, very young person to the UK. I have family and friends here in India, so I know, you know, what the issues are. And this is probably the best compliment that I got about my own parenting of my children. A very good friend of mine who's known me since junior college. He's very fond of me, talks nicely about me. He met my children, I think 18 months ago. He spoke to them for 5-10 minutes. And at the end of that meeting, he said to me, Indrajit, I'm sorry to say, but both your children, they are like one step ahead of you. And I think that was the best compliment I could get, you know, because it felt worthwhile that what my wife and me had put in over the years has led to this. And like I said to you before, you know, there are certain countries where it is felt that we can deal with this problem as a family. It doesn't need to go outside this house. Nobody else needs to know about it. But when I go through different risk factors for mental health issues in children, you will realize that most of the causes of these issues are within the family. Yeah, the thing about child psychiatry that is different from adult psychiatry is that even low-key interventions can make a difference if you recognize the problem early, and it usually involves people around the child having to change the way they deal with the child, rather than expecting the child to sort themselves out. And this could be not necessarily just the parents, but it could be the educators as well. What we're looking for is good enough. We're not looking for perfection, yeah? Because then again, this puts pressure on people. You know, you have to achieve this. You have to come first in class. You have to, you know, come first in the race. Keep things simple. And there is a lot of emphasis on self-help. You know, you can't take your child to the doctor or to the teacher and say, now sort this problem. Everybody, you know, you have to help yourself. People can give you advice, but at the end of the day, it is the parents or the teachers who have to implement that, and then you can, you know, see things improve. What is it that we learn from children? The moment you join pediatrics, the first thing you're told is that children are not small adults. You might give them a smaller dose of paracetamol depending upon their weight, but the way you talk to them or counsel them is not like just a little bit less than what you would say to an adult with mental health issues. The two greatest strengths that I have seen with children is one is unconditional love. There is no you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. that comes later because then they learn that from adults, that you need somebody to do a favor for you before you return it. And the other thing I have learned is the resilience of children. I live in the Western world, but some of the children I see who go into foster care or adopted, when I read their stories, the word I can think of is horrific, the way they have been brought up in the circumstances. And you're thinking, when I see this child tomorrow in clinic, they will be completely broken. And then in they walk in smiling and, hello, doctor, are you a man? How are you? And I think this is amazing, the resilience. What we need to learn as parents, and there is again a Children's Act in the UK which changed their wording in saying that children are your responsibility. You don't have a right on them. Yeah. You can't be unrealistic in your expectations. There is something called unhelpful parenting, where because people are having children later on in their life, they're having less children. They're moving away from the grandparents. A grandparent might tell that, look, this what your 3-year-old is doing is absolutely normal. You don't need to get worried about this and go and see this doctor and that. Another important term that has come up recently with the social media pressures is called sharing, where parents are sharing images of their children. Even antenatal scans are coming up on, and so that thing is brought into children right very early on, that you start sharing your images. I must say the 2 pictures of my children that I put up, I did take their consent, and that's from nearly 20 years ago. Yeah. As educators, it is important, it is such a rewarding job because of, you are bringing up the people of the future. And Angela Merkel, who was the ex-chancellor of Germany, recognized this very well. So in Europe, amongst all the countries, the teachers will be paid highly, not just the doctors and the engineers, because she recognized that it is the teachers who are responsible for bringing up these doctors and scientists of the future. And we all need to, not just as pediatricians or people working with children, but even as teachers, the strengths that will help you is being patient with children, being opportunistic. As a doctor, if the child is lying on the floor and I want to examine them, I would lie down on the floor and examine them. I wouldn't expect them to come and sit on a chair and do a detailed examination. And the most important thing we do as doctors, as pediatricians, is to reassure people. Most of the things, if you say, just give this some time, it will get better. Parents find it difficult to believe, but that is what pediatrics is all about. But obviously, you can reassure people if you are reassured yourself, and that reassurance will only come with experience. I'm very much on a warmth and kindness agenda, being considerate and nice to people, not deliberately hurting. Sometimes you might inadvertently hurt somebody, but this saying or doing something where you know very well that the only thing this is going to achieve is to hurt somebody. Very important to talk to strangers. I know we encourage children not to talk to strangers, but within a certain end, not straight off the street or something, but if you're within a group, talk to other people. This was very interesting that I learned last year, that last year the Nobel Prize winners for medicine, who came up with the COVID vaccine, not the most common one that we use, they were in the same department, they didn't know each other, but they were standing behind one another at the photocopying machine, just waiting their turn, and they got talking. And the next thing you know is you've got the Nobel Prize for medicine. You need at least one good friend. You don't need tens and thousands of friends. You need one good one who you can talk to about anything, which again in the UK you'd say from sunshine to sunset. You can, without worrying that if I tell him or her this, they might get upset or they might tell somebody else. Do surround yourself with positive people and of any age. I've got some very, very young friends as well. Yeah. I know this is a controversial one for educators to believe that it is okay to swear, but not at somebody, but it's okay to swear. And I'll tell you why. There was some research done in Southampton where they had 2 groups of people who were having to put their hands into a bucket of ice. And one group just had to put their hands in and they counted how many seconds they could hold their hands in. And the other group were allowed to swear when they had their hands in the cold water of ice. And the ones who were swearing could keep their hands in for longer because it just helped them cope with what. So swearing is okay as long as it's not at anyone. Everybody knows, for children's physical mental health issues, there is a big interplay between development and environment. So even if you have twins, if their environments are different, if one of them gets adopted or whatever, or has an illness that affects them, then there is going to be a difference in these children. Important for parents to know that intelligence in children is very much dependent on the parents' IQ. Yeah. So if I struggled in school and my wife is also not that bright, then I cannot expect my son now to become a scientist. And the earlier I recognize that, the better. Like I said, and there are a lot of environmental issues that go on which can affect health in general, not just physical, but not just mental health, but any kind of health. There are lots of environmental factors that apply as well. And the most important thing we can do is be mindful of the protective factors. You know, how do you prevent harm in these children? And the thing is the secure attachment. You know, so right from birth, being the attachment or the bonding between the primary caregiver and the child. Doesn't have to be the mother. The primary caregiver could be the father. It could be a foster carer, somebody who's adopted. But that bond is important because that is what lays the foundation for what happens in future. Having a positive experience in school. I'm still surprised when I talk to people my age now who said, I really didn't enjoy school, you know, because I was struggling, nobody recognized. If you have a vision problem or you have a stammer, it's very obvious. But there were children my age now who had probably autism or ADHD, which was not recognized then, and they really struggled. This slide is, you know, the one that I was talking about. But these are the risk factors for mental health issues in children and young people, and this is, you know, applicable to children all over the world. There is no reason why children in India or Mauritius are any different to anywhere else in the world. If you go through genetics, so if you have a parent with a mental health issue, then that puts you at an increased risk of developing mental health problems. If the parenting lifestyle, you know, so if there's domestic violence, poverty, alcoholism in the parents' drug use, that is going to impact on the child. One of my big bugbears is parental acrimonious separation. You know, when there is divorce, you know, children have to learn that everybody can't get along with everybody. It's fine to fall out, but it's when you start using your children to fight your battles or, you know, comparing one another, that leads to problems in children. And this is a film that I'd like to promote. It's just, like I said, gone up on YouTube called The List. I would suggest you have a look and also encourage parents to have a look because there is a message at the end which lays, you know, the importance of getting along with your, you know, each other for the sake of your children. Chronic illnesses, brain damage. It's interesting that lots of young people in prisons have issues with language and reading. There's a big correlation between that. If you have speech difficulties, not always, but prisoners are more likely to have problems with their speech. Child abuse issues are worldwide. You know, when I was training as a junior doctor in India, we were being told that, you know, sexual abuse doesn't exist in India. But even my mother was telling me about stories from like 70 years ago. Having unrealistic expectations, putting pressure on your children, comparing one child against the other. You know, your brother is so good at maths and you're this and you're useful. You know, using words like you're useless, you're an idiot, and then some parents will tell, I was saying it lovingly. But you need to ask that child, did they think of it as being lovingly, or did they think, you know, the child will not hate the parent for calling them an idiot. They're thinking, if my father is so clever, if he's calling me an idiot, then it must be that I am an idiot. Which then means I can't live up to the expectations of my parents. Because something as simple as that, people don't realize it when they say it, what impact it might have on this child. Then peer pressure, social media, alcohol, substance use in the child or young person itself. And then you've got the sexuality and gender identity, which is again a universal issue. This is the actual slide at the bottom talks about, it hasn't come up fully here, but the reason I took this picture from the Sunday Times is because it was talking about how the, you know, prescribing of antidepressants has gone up really high in the UK. But this slide, the photograph above just came by the way. There is a race in the UK, you know, they have it on the River Thames, where university graduates from Cambridge and Oxford compete against each other every year. And the young man in the glasses who collapsed over there was the captain of the Oxford team, who knew very well that he was not well. You know, he had a diarrhea and vomiting illness the previous day. He was exhausted. He was dehydrated. But there was this pressure. No, I think he put the pressure on himself that, you know, I am the captain of the team. I have to be there. Rather than thinking, I think it would be foolish if I go. Let's get somebody else, you know, let somebody else become the captain and let's get somebody else in my place. Safeguarding children is important. Everybody knows about the physical abuse. Even in the UK, you are allowed to smack your children as long as you don't put a mark on them. So because if there is a bruise, then you get into trouble. Emotional and neglect are the things that are very undercurrent. You might not even know this, calling somebody an idiot or saying you're not good enough. Whatever you do, it's not up to the standard. Then there is a very interesting entity called as fabricated and or induced illness or perplexing presentations when children are brought to the doctors with different symptoms, headaches, seizures, and you're thinking, this is not making sense. What they're telling me doesn't actually fit in with any medical illness. And then you start thinking, maybe there is something else going on here, where either these things are being made up and you are ending up investigating these children. And the making up might be to do with anything. It might be that the parent has a mental health problem. They are anxious. So every little thing the child does is then, interpreted as they're having a seizure or whatever. Yeah. Very important to believe children because they might disclose something to you suddenly out of the blue. Suddenly something might come out. Very important that you believe them to start off with. Don't just dismiss something because it's difficult to deal with difficult things. Yeah. Make sure you keep the channels of communication open. Because the child needs to feel, if I tell my mother about this, she will not get upset and they will not, I can talk to her about anything that's upsetting me so that she might get me the help that I need. Another thing that affects me quite a bit now, over the years is the chronicity of the abuse. Dania Glazer is one of the experts in child sexual abuse and she's also an expert in the fabricated illness. I still remember her telling us at the course, this is like 25, 30 years ago, that when she was interviewing an 8-year-old girl who was being sexually abused by her father, as part of the interview, it came across that the girl thought all fathers had sex with their children. Because that's how she was being groomed, and she's thinking, this is like normal. I have children telling me, my parents said, I wish we'd never adopted you. And then I said, how does that make you feel? And they said, well, they say it to me all the time. So what's I've kind of got used to it now. Quick, this is the thing about childhood trauma can set you up for the rest of your life. This is something to do look up on Google called Adverse Childhood Experiences or ACEs. The video is long, we'll just play the first 2 minutes, which tells you about the impact of trauma as a child, which can affect you for the rest of your life. Yes, ma'am, can we go ahead with that?
My parents don't understand. All the drinking and fighting means I'm scared. I'd like a cuddle, perhaps a bedtime story, but mostly I'd like them to stop shouting at me. And sometimes they hit me. Feeling scared every day and not feeling loved or wanted will change me for the rest of my life. Later, I'll have problems at school, problems with alcohol, and I'll get in trouble with the police. What's happening to me right now means I'm more likely to have serious health problems in middle age and die sooner than I should.
You can stop there. The next slide, please. Yes, that's the one. Yeah. As doctors, we like to show things, act clever and show you some scans, etc., etc. If you look at that, the bit that shows you about the temporal lobes, the one that's got the yellow, green, and red is that of a child, who has not experienced trauma, neglect as a child, whereas the one on the other side, which is quite black, shows how there can be changes in the brain if you sustained emotional harm and neglect over the years. And there is this concept of intersectionality. Different factors play a role, like we talked about. So it's not just your race or your sex, it's your ethnicity, it's your nationality. So all these interplay to decide whether you are going to end up with problems or not later on in life. Physical development, I mean, people know about cerebral palsy. Everything in pediatrics is development related, it is age related, some of it is sex related. You know, girls are better at something than other boys. So it's very important, and there are certain what we call as red flags in the developmental process. There are lots of things children are meant to achieve in their developmental milestone, but there are certain ones which we call as the red flags, which then start pointing out to, you know, this is likely to be autism, this is likely to be ADHD, this might lead to learning problems. It's very much a multidisciplinary team approach. So it's not just the doctors, even if it's a health issue, there is a lot of interplay with education. It's a huge team. Obviously, that depends upon the complexity of the problems. Not everybody in the team gets involved. And schools have a vital role to play because these children are spending a lot of time in school. The teachers are observing them like the parents. And like we've already said, most of the signs and symptoms are coming by the age of 14 in 50%. In the UK, you would take permission, you take consent from the parent to write to school for information. And I've got a handful in the past 25 years who might have said no. Because if a parent denies me consent to write to school, immediately I have a suspicious mind anyway. And I'm thinking, why do they not want me to write to school? You know, obviously, what they're telling me, some of that should be seen in school as well. And there is this issue about, you know, getting inclusivity. You know, there will be children in the class that have difficulties. They don't need to be then, you know, made to feel different, or they have to go to, all of them don't need to go to a special school. You can accommodate them within the school, giving them the extra help and support that they need. There is an issue of consent. You know, you don't have to be 18. There can be some very mature 14-year-old who can give you consent. Confidentiality. So I would tell the young person or the child, look, whatever is happening between you and me in this room will stay in this room as long as it's not something that can lead, you know, put your life at risk. So if you're going to disclose some physical abuse or sexual abuse, then I will have to take action. I can't promise you that I will not talk about any of what you tell me. And again, we have to remember, as a pediatrician, obviously, but even as the educators, you have to remember that your relationship is with the child. You are the child's teacher, like I am the child's doctor, or the child is my patient. It's best if we all work together, but there might be situations where the parents have a different idea compared to you. And then if I start worrying that these parents are now going to complain about me, so let me just do what the parents want me to do. Or as educators, you're thinking, oh, they will remove this child from this school, so we will lose the fees for this one child. You have to remember that your duty of care is towards the child. You have to be thinking about their best interest, not about the parent. And we need to know about these transitions. You know, you're going from primary to secondary school, then you're going into higher education. There has to be communication from the previous school to the next school to make sure everything is put in place. There are some children where you might have to teach them life skills and, you know, how to live independently rather than aspiring to become a scientist or whatever people might expect of them. Very important to encourage other interests in them. You know, like in the UK, as a child, as a boy, if you don't know anything about football, you don't have to play football, but you need to know about football because that is how you make friends. If you don't talk about football, you will not make as many friends. You know, when I became a pediatrician, I went to the UK, I realized very soon I better learn about football because that's how I can communicate with the children. You know, some parents are telling me, I'm surprised my son spoke to you, but it was probably because you started talking about football that made him more comfortable and he started talking to you. So it's not all about maths and chemistry and physics. Neurodiversity, I'll go through these slides quickly, but you know, this is about, it's coming up very much in the forefront, of which, you know, people would understand as autism and ADHD as being the main ones, but it's like a comorbidity. You know, again, as doctors, not only do we want to be clever, but if we find one problem, then we go looking for others. So you can have autism on its own, but you could have it with other things like dyspraxia or, you know, problems with maths, etc. And basically now the incidence is 1 in 5 or 1 in 7 of us will be neurodivergent. Yeah? And again, the milder end of the spectrum are probably unrecognized. You will all know children that are a bit, you're thinking, why is this child saying not realize that this auntie is going to get upset if they call them. She might be fat, but then you say it on her face. Yeah. So, you know, learning the social etiquette. And you have to remember that these are lifelong conditions. We should call them pervasive developmental disorders, which mean you should see the signs and symptoms everywhere, in the school, in the playground, at home. But now we started realizing that there is this entity called masking, where some children might mask their symptoms. So they will keep it all bottled up. And parents in the Indian context who use pressure cookers will tell you, oh, abroad is if you have a bottle of fizzy drink and you shake it, and then you open the lid, how it all just comes out. Some of these children will keep it all in at school because they have to conform as everybody else. But then on the way back from school or when they go home, then boom, it all explodes. Yeah. And that's why it's important to get school observations, what is happening to these children in school. Parents' mental health, they have been diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and then they realize actually what I'm seeing in my child, which are symptoms of autism or ADHD, I had it as a young person. And that's probably what it was. It wasn't depression or anxiety. So you've got the autism spectrum, which is to do with communication, most importantly, social communication, making friendships. And then there are certain, some 4-year-old child who knows all the planets. People, oh, my son is very clever, but actually this son of yours doesn't have any friends, because they're probably on the spectrum. Important to know about ADHD, because this is one condition in child psychiatry where medication can make a big difference. I have some children who tell me once their ADHD diagnosis was made and they started medication, it was almost like a light was switched on in their brain, and suddenly they could focus and they could understand math. So it's important that parents are not in denial. Let's get this assessed. If it is ADHD, let's treat it, and then we can see what difference it makes. And it's not just the diagnosis, there are many other things going on with these conditions. And the one that I see the most in my clinical practice is the lack of sleep. The children are not sleeping, therefore the parents are not sleeping, and then nobody can function the next day. You're supposed to go to work and act like normal, but you can barely stay awake. And there are all these other, we have children now who are ready for school. So they're coming up to the reception here in the UK, but they're barely talking. They're not eating, not sleeping. They're still in their nappies because they're difficult to. It's not because the parents haven't done a good job. It's probably because they are on the severe end of autism. There are ways to diagnose this. We won't go into the details of all this, but then again, the diagnostic tests can be adapted to where the child is. So there are different tests, modified tests that can be used for children in the subcontinent. And it's not just a diagnosis of autism. There is what they call as executive function. So it's not just that there are other things that are going on, how the child is organized, impulse control, their working memory, all this goes together with that. And then there is this entity called dyspraxia. We all know there are some clumsy children. Everybody can't play football like the other one. But it's not just being clumsy. Again, there are other things that are going on with this clumsiness. Again, to do with how they process things, how they remember things, how they organize the day. It's not just that they're being lazy. It's probably because they don't understand how to do this. You send them upstairs, go get such and such, and then they come down with only one such, and the rest they've forgotten. Not because they weren't listening. It's probably because they're not able to process it. You've got the school refusal and you've got the truancy. So one, you're refusing to go to school, or then you go to school and then you disappear. Yeah. Again, this is another thing we need to deal with. We term it as after school activity overload. Children are spending a long time in school, and then you've got to go for piano lessons, badminton, swimming, this, that. Every day there is something. This is not from UK, but I heard a friend of mine, I asked him the other day from India, and he said, I asked my nephew, what do you like to do on weekends? And his answer was, I like to sleep. Because he's trying to catch up on his sleep, because he's, there's one activity after the other. There is something we call as functional disorders or medically unexplained symptoms, where you end up, children can't tell their parents, even adults, if there is stigma and denial. I can't tell somebody I'm feeling low in mood, I want to end my life. You might say, I've got a headache or I've got a tummy ache. And then you end up investigating all that, finding nothing. And then you realize that actually the problem is to do with, the emotional health rather than something physical. There are other mental health disorders. There's something known as conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder. So it's not just everybody's a naughty child. There might actually be a diagnosis of a mental health problem for these children. Social media is again a completely different ballgame. There is this very new recent book that has come up by Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation, and I suggest you look at that. There's some very interesting things, when we were growing up as children, we went outside, we climbed up trees, we took risks, we knew this might happen. But nowadays you sit in a room, play video games, you kill people, but you're not taking any risks. You're just sitting there and killing people. Yeah. Boys, when they reach a certain age, they want to make girlfriends, but you need a certain level of confidence to approach a girl and start talking to her. And if you don't have that confidence, then the easiest option is to look at online porn. Yeah. There are children who are spending nearly 45% of their time constantly on the internet. Bigger problem for girls because they're comparing themselves to other girls. You know, I don't look like Kim Kardashian or Alia Bhatt or whatever. Yeah, that kind of stuff. The advice is no phones till you're 14. My wife didn't allow my children to take the phones to their bedroom till they were 18. But when they were older, I asked them, you know, what would you do? Your mom's done this for you. What would you do? And they said, we'd do the same. They didn't even take 5-10 seconds. And that's probably because neither my wife nor me took our phones to the bedroom. And there was a study done in Norway recently. They looked at over 3-year period. Students were not allowed to take their phones into school. And after 3 years, they found in the girls, the grades went up. Their visits to mental health professionals went down by 60%. And both the boys and girls faced less bullying because again, there was less of this comparison, you know, who's better looking than whom and what you do. Very quickly, I think you would probably deal mainly with the alpha generation now. It's all technology. The most interesting thing to think about is that the children from the alpha generation are the first in the generation where they will not all of them, but most of them will not look up to their parents as their role models. You know how I started my presentation with I looked up to, yes. So this will be a generation where the parents might not, it might be Virat Kohli, which is not a problem, but they will not look up to their parents. There are some good things as well. They will be most, you know, and conscious about the environment, protecting the planet, that sort of stuff will come up. Their attention levels will be low. Interesting that in 80% of the families, so what you do on a day-to-day basis, you might want to go and see a film, but your child wants to go to a restaurant. In 80% of the time, what you do in that day will be dictated by your child or the young person, not on what you want to do. And yes, like I said, it's about overall development. It's not only about chemistry and maths. You need to learn survival skills. You need to learn other things. Again, I go back to my mother. Her older brother taught her to drive a car we're talking 60 years ago. But my uncle opened the bonnet of the car and showed her how everything works. And he didn't allow her to drive the car till she knew how to change the wheel. She didn't, not that she needed to, but at least she knew how it's done because she might be driving somewhere on her own. You need to learn that. When I used to go for parent-teacher meetings, my wife will tell you, I was never interested when they said your son is very bright and he's got this. And the only question I ask them is, are my children popular? Do they have friends? That's all I want to know. I want to know is if on the playgrounds, were they just on the periphery and all the other kids are playing with each other? I want to know about whether they have friends. I'm not interested if they were expected to get 90% in maths and they got 85. We probably end with this. You know, the thing is about each one of us are thinking, yeah, you can play. I could have thought, what difference will I make? You know, I'm trying to raise awareness of mental health in children. And I think this short story says it all.
One day, a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking up starfish and throwing them into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "Excuse me, but what are you doing?" The boy replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean. The sun is rising and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back, they'll die." The man laughed to himself and said, "But there's too many starfish on this beach. You can't possibly make a difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish and threw it into the ocean. Then turning to the man, he said, "I made a difference to that one."
The end was about some references about books to read about, but I think we can leave that for now. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
We apologize for the tardiness on our end, and thank you, sir, for sharing the glimpse inside the mind of a child and delivering such an engaging and insightful session. We also warmly welcome Dr. A.K. Singh Gupta, who has joined us. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We now will wait for a short tea break along with the MIE. And we are open for the question answer session. So a chit is passed around for all those who want to ask their questions. You can write your questions and address it to the speaker. It will be taken from you at the end of the sessions before we break for the presentation. And for the ones who are attending online, you may please leave your questions on the chat box or address specifically during the question answer round, and we will take it from there. Thank you.
Next, we are pleased to introduce Dr. A.K. Singh Gupta, founder and convener of the Higher Education Forum in Mumbai. Dr. Singh Gupta will present on holistic teaching and learning environments. Dr. Gupta is a prominent figure in higher education India, known for his role as a teacher, researcher, and a thinker. Holding a PhD in commerce, he is the founder and convener of the Higher Education Forum, HEF, India's largest higher education think tank with over 3,500 members, focusing on capacity building for students and teachers. Dr. Singh Gupta is the founding director of SIS Schools of Learning and Leadership Development and mentor of SIS College of Management Studies and SIS Schools of Business Studies. He also mentors the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan K.M. Munshi Institute of Advanced Studies and serves as a vice chairman of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan Navi Mumbai. His past role includes professor and director at SPJIMR, director at SIS Coms, World Bank consultant, and professor at NIBM. He began his career with Punjab National Bank. Dr. Singh Gupta has authored 6 books and over 50 research articles in national and international journals. Let's welcome Dr. Singh Gupta to the dais. So please, it's a request. Mauritius Institute of Education are having a tea break for 5 minutes.
Yeah, of
So
course.
they want you to
Wait for 5 minutes or what?
No, no, attending, they are joining.
Please. The request came from there. No? Is it okay?
Sensor is now starting. Is it okay?
Right?
Do you need a partner? Teacher, summer researcher. It will be online from South Africa, the Mauritius. Major presentations in Mauritius.
We are having more than 70 delegates.
So, good afternoon, friends. I think we are at the fag end before the lunch session. What would you say? A difficult time for all of us. I will try to make the interaction as brief as possible. Professor Savita Sabde, Principal, MCT College of Education and Research. Dr. Narendra Deshmukh, Senior Scientific Officer, Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, DIFR. The faculty members and the delegates from the Mauritius Institute of Education. The other delegates sitting here and who are on the online. Ladies and gentlemen. See, I think the topic given to me for discussion is Industry 5.0 and need for creating an holistic teaching learning environment. That's a very abstract subject actually. I have been in the teaching learning space for last 40 years. And things have changed significantly since then. If you look at education about 40 years before, and you look at the educational space today, the things are significantly different. In the Indian context, the first educational policy came up somewhere in 1964-65, which is popularly called as Kothari Commission's report. Now, this Kothari Commission's report was a landmark as far as the educational system reform goes. But the problem in India, the education system has been a multifold since then. If you look at the Kothari Commission's report, it's about a huge book. It's a book researched several times. We have read at least, I have at least read it about 30-40 times. The more you read it, the more you try to gather knowledge out of it. And there are a lot of research which has been done on. But the point arises that we are proud as Indians in terms of our education system. There are no two opinions about it. India has the largest network of the schools. India has the largest network of higher education institutions. India has got the largest manpower in terms of the school students, college students, outgoing or go to the corporate world, and so on and so forth. So in terms of the volume, I don't think there has never been an issue. The issue has been that we possibly somewhere, I don't know whether I'm making a controversial statement or not, but the fact of the matter remains that we have been very fragmented in approach. In the sense that we are a union of states. And when you talk about a country which is a union of states, and that's the significance of India, that's the nature of India, nature of Indian constitution, if you put in that way. And every state has got no role to play in the state. And therefore what happens is the education system becomes highly fragmented. Because what happened, the education system was brought under the concurrent list. And when you bring the education under the concurrent list, the state has got an equal right vis-a-vis the education at the central government. And therefore, you look at it, the same thing, we have got, let's say, for example, school context, we're talking about, we have got the state board school, we have got a CBSE, we have got an ICSE, we have got an IB. I mean, there's several types of the boards, which doesn't happen anywhere in the world. In the world, if you look at it, you will see something called a private school, something called a government school. That's what happens all over the world. If you look at the USA, if you look at the UK, look at Germany, look at Finland, which we'll talk about one of the best education systems, you will look at it that you have got certain schools which are in the private schools, certain schools in the government schools. But the curriculum, the syllabus, the type of methodology, the quality of the school teachers, by and large, is the same. India, when I say fragmented, that's what I meant actually. If you look at the state boards and if you compare the state board syllabus of one state with another state, for example, I was a product of the West Bengal State Board. Now, if you look at the West Bengal State Board of Education, I passed it long back in 1968. So I'm talking about if you look at that, and if you compare it with some of the state boards, there was a huge amount of difference. And therefore, the students who are coming at one particular state board used to be hugely different in terms of the quality compared to the students coming at other state board education. That's what I'm talking about, that our education system by and large has been fragmented. And when you have a fragmented education system, you can't create a holistic individual. And therefore, our education system by and large has created a fragmented individuals. So you have created a Bihar individual, you have created a West Bengal individual, you have created a Maharashtrian individual, you have never created an Indian individual. So that has been a major problem in the Indian education system. The second is, our education system was never aligned with the international education system. It was a very heterogeneous education system. Somewhere we have a 10+2, I call that 11 standard. I mean, somewhere people are entering at the age of 8, somewhere people are entering at a 4, somewhere people are entering at a 6, somebody is, I mean to say, graduating from the school at the age of 14. It was a mess. I graduated from the school education at the age of 16, which is unacceptable in the international standard. Because international standards are extremely clear that you enter at a particular age, your span of the education system should be such that you graduate at the age of 18. That's the international norm today. You may be entering at the age of 6, you may be entering at the age of 3, but at the end of the graduation, your age should be 18. I mean, that's what the international norms are. And we have actually not followed this particular norm. Different states have different rules, different, what you call, parts of the country have different rules, and therefore there was absolutely fragmentism as far as the curriculum, the structure of the Indian educational standard, because they were aligned with the international education standard. So fragmentation in terms of the structure, the fragmentation in terms of the curriculum, fragmentation in terms of the approach of the schools were totally different. The same was in the case of higher education. But at least in higher education, we followed a same system. We had a 3-year graduation everywhere, barring a few graduation which had a 4-year duration. You know, we had some amount of sanity, some amount of equality. But we were not following international standards, because internationally, whenever we talk about a graduation, any graduation, whether we are talking about a BA, BSc, BCom, engineering, architecture, any engineering, any graduation, we are talking about a 4 years of graduation. In India, some graduation were 2.5 years, some graduation were 3 years, and some graduation were 4 years, some graduation 5 years, like medical graduation, 5 years. So again, although in higher education, we had some amount of sanity that by and large, majority of the graduation were 3 years, but still we followed on 3 year, 4 year, and 5 year. So our BA, BSc, BCom used to be 3 years, our engineering college, architecture used to be 4 years, and medical used to be 5 years. So what happened is actually, when you have an education system like this, that you follow whatever you like to follow, and you are not following the international standards, we had a lot of problems. You know, I still remember the Indian education students who graduated, they cannot go to the postgraduate to the USA because they are not completing the 16 years of age. 16 years of education they did not complete, and therefore used to wait for 1 year for getting to the USA for the purpose of getting a postgraduate degree. So our education system was not aligned with the international education system in terms of the structure, in terms of the curriculum, in terms of many other things. As I told you, the Kothari Commission did not look into it, because at that particular point in time, we have just got the independence, and therefore we were not looking at the international education system, and alignment with the international education system was not our agenda. After 1964, there was a huge gap. Next education policy came in 1986. Sam Pitroda. Next came in 1990. Next came in 1992. But nowhere people looked at the international education system. And therefore, when the National Education Policy 2020 came up by Kasturi Rangan, these are one of the major focus, that how do I tune the education system with the international education system. And therefore, we hope there is some amount of sanity in terms of alignment of the Indian education system with the international education system when we look forward. So this is one major difficulty we had in India. The second difficulty was that when you have such a fragmented education system, we were giving more stress to equity, justice, access, reservation, and there was a less amount of focus on quality. And therefore, what has happened in Indian education system, though we are proud of our education system, 70% of the graduates at all levels, whether they are school graduates, whether they are higher education graduates, whether they are technical and professional education like engineering, management, etc., graduates, 70% of the people are non-conforming to the international standards. I mean, this statement here, they are non-conforming to the international standards. You know, in international education, what happens is depth of the education is very strong. We had a very peculiar problem that our breadth was very strong, our depth was not strong. What I'm trying to say, we are trying to teach too many subjects in too less a period of time. Therefore, what happens is can never go to the depth of the subject. And they cannot go to the depth of the subject, the quality question doesn't arise. So what happened is that because of these structural imbalances and because of the lot of confusion which arose in the minds of the education makers and lot of bodies in India, so whether we are talking the NCRT, starting from the NCRT to the CBSE board, I would say let's not go to those political things. What has happened actually in India, there was a lot of less focus on the quality and more focus on the only on the quantity, the more focus on the equity, justice, access, reservation, and so on and so on. And therefore, in terms of the NEP 2020, probably these type of aberrations people have tried to remove, and we hope that the things will improve in order to create an education system which will be aligned with the international education system to some extent, which will try to be a little bit outcome-based education rather than input-based education. You know, that's another major problem in India. You know, we have always talked about input-based education system. You go to the 6th class, you have got a specific section of history you teach. You go to a commerce college and you will see that they have a certain amount of the book given, and the book contains a certain formula you are supposed to teach the student. You start talking about what is the first principles accounting, what is the second principle accounting, what is the first principle accounting, without knowing why I'm teaching accounting. The students, neither the teachers nor the students were clear about what is supposed to be achieved at the end of the day. So neither even till today the teachers are not aware. See, I have been interacting with a large number of the teachers. Probably I've interacted with more than 100,000 teachers in my lifetime. Different teachers I'm talking about. When I ask the teachers that when you go to a class, when you come out of the class, can you say that what did you achieve in the class? Or did you achieve in the class what is expected to be achieved in the class? First of all, there is no benchmark. What is to be expected to be achieved at the end of the class, at the end of the class, or at the end of the session, or at the end of the course? All over the world, there is something called as education is moving towards an outcome-based education. So that you know what is there at the end of the day, what type of competencies a student is expected to arrive. At the end of the 7th class, what type of competencies a students are expected to arrive or achieve. At the end of the 10th class, what type of competencies the students are expected to achieve. At the end of the engineering, what are the expected competencies engineering students should arrive, etc., etc., etc. Please remember, the theory of education is very clear. The theory of education says that education is not acquisition of knowledge. It is not acquisition of knowledge. If you think that it is only a transaction based or it is only a transmission based, and therefore acquiring your knowledge, I mean, say, writing something or reading something and acquire the knowledge, that is not the way of acquisition of a knowledge. Knowledge is completely different. Knowledge is every child has got certain sets of beliefs over a period of time. When you are born and after your parentage, etc., you develop certain types of beliefs. You experience something and you reinforce your beliefs and they get ingrained in your mind. That's education. And therefore, experiential learning has become an extremely important tool in the outcome-based education. You know, people are talking about project-based learning, people are talking about experience-based learning, people are talking about internship-based learning, people are talking about immersion-based learning. You know, all those are new buzz of education they have come up actually in order that the education is a set of experiences. Education is a sigma of experiences. Education is not a sigma of inputs. In India, what has happened is actually that since the teachers were not clear that at the end of the day, what is the students are supposed to achieve at any level. I was only given a book, I was given a syllabus, and I'm supposed to go and tell to the students. So it has become more of a transmission based, more of a transaction based of a knowledge sharing, rather than experience based of a knowledge sharing. As a result of which the students have not learned anything. And therefore, you will see in 90% of the cases, once the student writes the examination, after that they forget everything. Next day they are blank. You ask them anything, they will not be in a position to say anything. A child might have got 99%, but the child will not remember anything. We get pathetic students today at the graduate level, at the postgraduate level, where I'm associated mainly, where we see that the students don't know anything about 99.99%. It's not the fault of the child, it's the fault of the educational system. Let's not blame the child. It's a fault of the education system. This is nothing but defined. It was based on input. They have grabbed the input that memorize the input, and the moment the purpose is over, that is the examination you have written, they totally forget about it. And therefore there is no quality. Because there is no competency based educationally. And if there is no competency based education institute, it cannot be useful to the society because the society needs a competence. If you want to run a manufacturing company, you need a competency. If you want to run a logistic company, you need a competency. If you want to run an artificial intelligence based company, you need a competency. So if the child does not have a competency at the end of a given course, at the end of a given subject, at the end of a given program, it doesn't make any sense. So our education was never an outcome-based education. Our education was never a competency-based education. And therefore, we have somewhat faltered in the landscape of the education. And therefore, burying the islands of excellence. And again, I'm giving a statement, burying the islands of excellence, by and large, we have created the students who are devoid of any life experience. And if this continues in future, if this continues for another 10 years in future, possibly India will go behind. See, still we may be getting from the 5th largest economy, we were at the time independence, we were nowhere. We are already 5th largest economy and we are poised to become the 3rd largest economy in some time to come. But if you are trying to become the Vishwa Guru, if you are trying to catch up with the China, you know, let's say our GDP is somewhere in the range of $4 trillion, roughly I'm talking. And if you look at the Chinese, economy size, they're approximately $14–15 trillion. And if you look at the US, GDP is approximately $25 trillion, roughly I'm talking about. So if you are trying to catch from a $4 trillion to $14–15 trillion, it is not possible to do with this education system at all. And therefore, there is a need for reform in the education system. And that's going to be a background that why there is a need for a solid reform in the education system. And therefore, in that light, the national education policy that came up, that recommendation need to be looked at. They have tried to give a path-breaking recommendations. Because that is the first time the committee has talked about that our entire educational system should be competency, should be outcome-based. And we feel that within going forward, for example, let me give you what I mean outcome-based. Let me give an example. There is the committee has given a very specific recommendation. They are telling, I don't know whether how many of you are aware of it now. You know, I was associated with, I am just giving an example. I was associated and still I'm associated with some of the schools which are in a very, say, not somewhere in the ground, let me put it that way, on the very, very rural places. You know, there the schools are divided into sections, A, B, C. A section, you have got the best of the students, and C section, you have got the worst of them. That's the first one. That's the first one. Now, next come to the next one. I went to a class which is about 9th class. I had a child 45 plus 45. There was no answer. I told, okay, probably my English is bad, I could not. I asked Hindi then. ये 45 और 45 कितना होता है 40 और 40 कितना होता है 9th class child. The child didn't have an answer. Now this is a problem. This is the problem in India because there is nothing but an outcome-based education. Now the national education policy says that at the end of the 5th standard, the child should have a basic numeracy and a basic literacy. When you're talking about a basic literacy, it means that I shall be in a position to tell my name, I shall be in a position to tell my father's name, I shall be in a position to a mother's name, I shall be in a position to tell which class I'm reading. This is nothing. At least at the end of the 5th standard, you should be in a position to, irrespective of the school. Whether you're located in a city of Bombay, studying in such a type of an elite school, or if you're studying in somewhere in a very, very down in the eastern part of the country or the western part of the country. Any school you go at the end of the 5th standard, this is the minimum competence level which is supposed to be developed at the end of the 5th standard. And numeracy means actually that you should be in a position to do at least a basic multiplication, subtraction, and addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. Very, very simple. That means at least an attempt has been made to make the education outcome-based. Because that is basically need of the Indian education system. The second major step, and probably that is probably one of the most controversial but very forward-looking, in my personal opinion, step, that possibly after a couple of years, you will see there is nothing called an arts, science, and commerce up to 12th standard. And that's a one attempt towards developing a student towards a holistic student. Nowhere in the world this separation exists. You go to any part of the world, there is nothing called an art student or a science student or a commerce student as a school. School means school. Now, whether this is going to be good or bad, I cannot say in Indian context. Because the parents are still not able to digest this concept. They don't believe it. They say it cannot happen in India. They say it should not happen in India. 80% of the teachers also say it will not happen in India. But I can say with guarantee it shall happen in India. It's a question of time. A little bit delayed. Because the government wanted to do it from 2023, 24, but that was not possible actually, because what happened is the committee gave its recommendation in 2018. It was approved by the parliament only in 2020. 19, it was passed in 2019, and then actually everything started after that. Then people went to the election mode and so on and so forth. So actually there is a delay. But the delay does not mean it shall not happen. It doesn't mean at all. So therefore, if you look at that, the step towards a holistic development of a child will come the moment to break this particular segmentation, the silos. See, it will create problem for the teachers. What I'm trying to put in this way. What is beneficial for the student may not necessarily be beneficial for the parents. Let me put it that very, very clearly. If somebody says, that's a problem with the national education policy, and we have been debating it at various levels. That what happens is that if you look at all stakeholder benefit, it may not take place immediately. So therefore, I told that it may not be a good for a school where let us say 70% of the students are going for a commerce. No, therefore there is an overload for the commerce. That means the number of commerce teachers is very high there. So therefore, when you talk about a no art, science, and commerce, probably there will be less demand for commerce teachers there, and therefore some commerce teachers might lose their jobs. This is what is going to happen. This may not happen immediately. Therefore, there is a question of multi-skilling of the teachers also, which comes into it. See, I'm giving some blunt statement. So what I'm trying to say is actually that the complete separation of the arts, science, and commerce may not necessarily be a very good sign for the teachers as of today. But the fact of the matter, even it's an extremely good step for the students, it will be extremely good step for the country as a whole, and we should be ready for it. And this is the first step towards going towards whatever you call it, that a holistic development of a child, because there are a couple of other steps which have been taken. For example, the committee says that the 80% of the children at Korea, for example, South Korea, they at least know what is vocational education at the school. At least know what is vocational education. So they may not be in a position to feed the tire, as earlier speaker talked. But at least they know that there is something called a vocation which talks about electricity, there is something called a vocational education which is called a plumbing, there is something called a vocational education as called electrician, and so on and so forth. And if I'm not good for a high level job, I can possibly try to go for an electrician job or a plumbing job and so on and so forth. In India, there is nothing called a vocational education in the main curriculum framework. If you look at the state boards, if you look at the CBSE, if you look at the ICSE, there is nothing called what you call vocational education. The committee has recommended for the first time that from the 5th standard onwards, the vocational education will be integrated in the main education. Therefore, a child will learn arts, science, commerce, vocational education, and entrepreneurship. Apart from Indian languages. So So child will be learning arts, science, commerce, vocational education, entrepreneurship. Therefore, the child develops at the end of the 12th standard. You will get a full child rather than a half child, arts child or a science child or a commerce child. So that is the first step to a development of a what you call as a holistic child, because the holistic child does not mean the holistic development of only the physical, emotional. That's one aspect of holistic development. But the second aspect of the holistic development is actually that at the cognitive level also, a child should have all thinking ability rather than a segmented thinking ability. Today, children have got only one single thinking ability. Commerce child has got a commerce, a science student a science, and that too only the left side of the brain, and which is the rational thinking. So today we are creating a child who has got a single skill, a single phase of the mind or a brain, and a single specialization. This is the biggest problem within India in terms of the lack of holistic education. What the national education policy is trying to say is completely reversed. They are talking about multiple skills. They are talking about not only the left side of the brain, but also the right side of the brain. And we are also talking about not one specialization, arts or science or commerce, but a multiple specialization, so that what the last speaker also talked about, life skills. Therefore, the children at the end of the, when they come out of the school, what they acquire are the life skills rather than sectoral skills. So I know how to criticize, I know how to appreciate, I know how to love, I know how to be kind, I know mathematics. At the same time, I know moon, and same time also I know what is a tire, what is electricity, what is a plumber. And therefore, I become a more of an independent person rather than a dependent person. Today, if you look at the Indian education system, our children never become independent. They always are dependent on somebody or else. Mainly on parents, but I'm talking about otherwise also they're dependent. When they take a decision also, they're not independent minded. So national education policy also talking about the holistic education also signifies that there will be a migration of the Indian children from a dependent zone to an independent zone. That means the child will also be in a position to decide what to do, what not to do, what is good for me, what is not good for me. You must have looked in the West. In the West, no child stays with the parents after the age of 18 years. It's a wrong statement. Let me refine my statement. Children normally take their own decisions after 18 years. What they will do and what they will not. They never depend upon the parents for the decision. They are able to do it because they have seen the whole world. They see this because they have got the whole knowledge, not a partial knowledge. And they are very confident in themselves because they learn the life skills. That is what is going to happen to the Indian children after the period of 5 years. Therefore, the migration of the students from the arts, science, and commerce zone in a school level, I'm talking about the whole educational system, will result into different types of the Indian youth than what we see. This will be the same Indian youth who are studying in the US. There will be the same Indian youth you are studying in Australia. There will be same Indian youth who will be studying in UK. That means if you must have seen yourself that if a child goes to USA or the UK in the graduation or in the post graduation, when come back, they are totally different. They're independent, they have depth, they argue with you, they don't talk, they do whatever they like to do, they take their life in their own hands. We need those type of the youth rather than the thumb holding, thumb speaking, and the our subordinate, yes sir, no sir, I agree sir, I don't agree sir, I agree madam, we don't require those type of youth. We require challenging, conversing, independent mind to take the India to cross with the China's GDP of 14 trillion. And that's what the new education policy talks about, particularly at the school level. Look at the higher education. It's the same counterpart. What they're talking about is that in higher education also the problem is apart from the quality.
Again, we are talking about one aspect of life. A commerce student will only learn a commerce. A history graduate will only learn about history, maximum on anthropology. A technical guy will only learn technical thing. A non-technical guy will only non-technical thing. There is no confluence of ideas. All over the world. If you go to any university, anywhere in the world, if you go to the university, you will see the classical case of the universities. Universities are multidisciplinary. Universities are enthusiastic. Universities have got a vibrance. Universities have got a tremendous amount of a power and knowledge. In India, if you go into it, the many of the cases we will see that the institutes are single disciplinary, non-vibrant. The students are only learning or not attending to the classes, going working somewhere else. Attendance is absolutely poor, etc. etc. So what the higher education level, the education system is trying to say that we turn to the international standard of making the education multidisciplinary in nature. Completely multidisciplinary. What does it mean actually? Let me give an example. What it means. A mechanical engineering student can opt to have photography as a minor. Electrical engineering student can opt to have Bharatanatyam as a minor. A chemical engineering student can opt to have an accounting as a minor. See, this is one step beyond the international standards. This is one step beyond the international standards. Now what's happening is, I am allowing the student to do what he or she likes. Because I might have joined engineering, but I would like to pursue Bharatanatyam because that is my second choice in life, girl may say. Or I was forced to join mechanical engineering by my parents, but I would like to pursue my career in photography. I would like to pursue fine arts. I would like to pursue Bharatanatyam, which is what the national education policy provides. So you will see that the same logic of developing a holistic child is being attempted even at the higher education level also. What it means is actually, if you look at, well, we might have crossed the target, but I'm talking about if you look at, let's say, after a period of 5 or 6 years, you will see a different type of graduate. You will see a different, as you see a different type of the school graduate, similarly, you will see a different type of a college graduate. You will see a graduate who is ebullient, who will see a graduate not only a sector specific, but a child who is a little bit more diverse, because you have learned whatever you also want to learn. From a single skill, you are moving to a second skill. That means if there is no job in mechanical engineering, at least I can get a job in photography. If there is no job in mechanical engineering, I can get a job in accounting. Because single specific skill has got a tremendous amount of risk in life. Because if that skill doesn't have a space in India or doesn't have a space in the world, I am no one. So multiple skill, it actually allows me to draft into an unknown territory also. Draft into an unknown territory also. So you will see a different type of school graduates. You will see a different type of I'm going to say the college graduates after a period of, let's say, 5 to 6 years of time. So what will happen at the end of the day? I don't want to go the other recommendation. What will happen at the end of the day? At the end of the day, let's say after a period of 10 years, if you are, many of you are going to be in the teaching profession, many of us may not be there in the world even, but many of you are going to be there in the teaching profession, you will see a different type of thing. We are talking about alpha, beta, zeta, chala jayega. They will all go in. You will see a different type of beta, you will see that Indian youth. See, let's try to understand one thing. The demographic dividend of India, which the people boast about, is not going to stay beyond 2050. After 2050, we are going to become almost as it is as a country like China. Our elderly population should be 9.5% population. And 2050, it is supposed to be approximately about 18% of the population. You can imagine 18% of, even if you take the 150 billion, is a significant number. Today we have approximately, we are talking about 9.5. We are talking about 138 million people out of 142 million people as the senior citizens. As of now, this percentage is likely to become approximately 20% as per the World Bank report. So you can imagine in a country of 150 billion, I'm just projecting small number, from 142 billion, we reach only 150 billion. 150 billion, 20%. So we are talking about 300 million people. It's a huge number, which will become an elderly population by 2050. So the demographic dividend that people talk about is going to last hardly for another 20, 30 years. So whatever we need to do within these 20, 30 years. Whatever we need to do. The national education has not talked about it. I'm talking about the academic analysis, why the policy was so blunt. Because everybody knows that whatever we want to do, Viksit Bharat, whatever you talk about, a developed India dream, whatever you talk about, has to be achieved within the next 20, 25 years. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult us because we will again become a little bit of aged country. If you look at 2075 projection, it is horrifying as far as India is concerned. It's pretty bad in terms of, I'm talking in terms of population and the demographic composition of the population. So whatever we want to achieve, you have to achieve within the next 20, 25 years. And if that 20, 25 years to achieve, we need a different type of Indian people who can steer India into that type. So the entire concept of the national education policy, the holistic development of the child has to be looked into that view and the person. If that happens, the country will grow, and the country can only go, industry will grow. Therefore, we are talking about a lot of people become entrepreneurs, lot of people become entrepreneurs, a lot of growth will be there, lot of development can be there. But with today's youth, I don't know how many of you, today we are seeing, if you look at the report of the CII, if you look at the report of the Harvard Business School, if you look at any of the reports today, I'm just giving an example. One professional education, let's say for example, engineering. So they are talking about that 70%, 80% of the people are not employable. Now, when you look at the people are not employable, not to blame the children, not to blame the education system also. Not become employable, one of the reasons is they lack the life skills. One, they lack the application skills. So they know the knowledge, but they don't know how to apply them into the field. So what the national education policy is talking about? What is the point in creating a graduate who know the things, but who cannot apply them? Who are aware of the things, but are not in a position to implement them in the real world. Therefore, we will see an application-driven Bharat. We will see an application-driven India. We will see a competency-driven India if the national education policy comes up. And the competency-driven India will be comprising of a holistic individual rather than the segmented silo-based individual. And they will lead the India to the next orbit of growth. So we hope that the national education policy, if it is implemented properly, adequately, in the true spirit of the sense, without any political bias, honestly and robustly, there will be a different type of India than what we see in India. And India might become even the largest economy of the world. Forget about the second largest economy. We have the potential to become overcoming not only the China, forget about, I would say, China, anyway we can, if we do a 10% growth, today our growth is approximately 78% per annum. With 7 to 8% of growth, we will never be able to reach China. So growth rate has to become double that. If we really want to catch China, let's say in the period of 2035 or 2040. So idea is that can we catch China by 2030, 40 and then catch USA by somewhere 2070, 80? That's only possible if this new education policy, which talks about building the holistic competency-driven youth, that's only possible. Otherwise, we'll be nowhere. Our dream shall remain dream. I don't want to go beyond that. Thank you very much for giving this. Anybody wants to ask any questions? Yeah.
So in the graduation, we have introduced the major and minor subjects. Major and minor subjects. We were given an example also that those who are doing initially secondary but we are not certifying the minor subjects. So ultimately, when the graduate degree is given, the certification is only for the major subjects. So do you think that we should certify in the minor subjects?
Of course, we should certify the minor.
That now we don't certify.
You have to certify minor also. One. And two, but the national policy is not talking about two major and minor at all. It's about two major.
But now we have major and minor.
I know that. What I'm talking about, you have now major, minor. Minor you don't certify. I'm talking about minor has also to be certified, number one. Number two, national policy doesn't talk about major, minor at all. It talks about two majors.
They really want to take a two major means what? You can take an electrical engineering as a major, you can take photography as a minor. That's a different thing altogether. So you can get hardly 10% of the credits there. But I am talking about you can take 30% of the credit electrical engineering and 30% of the credit in mechanical engineering also. So you can get a two major of electrical engineering as well as mechanical engineering. That's also permitted under the National Education Policy.
But sir, the person who go for the minor and major, so then the chances are less of employment. Like the companies, they will hire only those people those who will have two majors instead of having one major and one minor.
I think you have hit a little bit tough. You are right, because today it's like this. It's like this. You know, I am not sure about the future. I go by the present trends. And therefore, presently, I see that a person has studied 3 years of one particular major, they are good. Therefore, if a person is taking two majors, there is a possibility of dilution in the quality. Therefore, I will not take. This is a perception. The perception shall undergo change. I'll tell you another perception today in India. We always say perception that online education is inferior to the physical education. In terms of a degree, I'm talking. That means if you take an MBA degree in online education, if you take some other degree in online education, MA history in online education, MA psychology in online education, they are inferior to the physical education. That's a perception in India. All over the world, completely different perception. All over the world, they are considered as good as the physical education. In India, we are also responsible for creating their perception because we have created substandard online education by many. So I need to move up into the value chain of the online education, where online education shall create a same level of competency compared to the offline education. Similarly, in the case of two major also, I need to create the same competency level among the students in both the majors. Is it for all students? Answer is no. Because all students cannot take up two majors. So it will be only a limited number of students who can take up both the alternate. I'll give you another example. MEP says research should be given a tremendous amount of responsibility, tremendous amount of respect. And India requires a large number of PhD. In India, in our time, there used to be a superfluous degree, which is called an MPhil. A very superfluous degree. I know how it is superfluous because many of us have undergone that degree, which is a very, very superfluous degree. National Education Policy told, why should we have a superfluous degree called an MPhil? So they have removed the MPhil. MPhil is gone. So therefore, after the post-graduation, I can directly go for doctoral education. And how do I go for doctoral education? That also NEPS PI, that we one national agency. Therefore, now the NEET has come into the picture. That even in the case of a NET, you can go for the doctoral degree. So NET will have a 3 bifurcations. NET will have a GRF, NET will have a doctoral, and NET will have an only for the purpose of the teaching. So NET will have a 3 classifications, henceforth there are 2 classifications. So NET examination, which is taking place now, I think 15th or 18th of June it is taking place. 18th of June, I think NET examination is taking place. They will have a 3 classification, the JRF qualification, which is the best people, and then the PhD qualification, which is a subset of the GRF, because without PhD you can't get a GRF, and third is actually for the teaching assistant professor. So that is what the National Education Policy talks about. Now, I was talking about research. What the National Policy Education says, look at the beauty. This does not exist anywhere in the world except US. Any student who has done a 4 years of degree course, because you can offer a 3-year degree course, you can offer a 4-year degree course. Any student who has opted for a 4-year degree course, who has taken the 4th year of the degree course by research, and if the child gets 3.75 CGPA out of 4 in the 4-year graduation course, he or she will be eligible for PhD directly after graduation. This is a path-breaking recommendation. Now, somebody with a person like me say, this is a nonsense. I did my PhD after taking a post-graduation, then doing an MPhil degree. What is this nonsense? It's a dilution of education. Many people are saying it is not a dilution of education. Because look at the recommendation clearly. They're talking about a 4-year of graduation. In the 4-year graduation, last year is only and only based for research. Therefore, there is a substantial amount of rigor will be maintained.
and you get 3.75 CGPA out of 4, which is huge. That means best of the best students in the country. They shall be eligible for PhD, short circuiting the route of 1 year of post-graduation. So you need not do an MPhil, you are short circuiting by 1 year, you need not do a 1 year post-graduation. That is also short circuited. You are a brilliant student, directly after graduation, you can go to a doctorate. Now, this is one of the brilliant recommendations of the National Education Policy. How it will be implemented, when it will be implemented, we have no idea. But it is one of the brilliantest recommendations of the NEP to create actually the good researchers in the country. That means I am devoted to research from the graduation itself. Today I decide to do a research, जब कुछ नहीं मिला, then I go for research. Many of us, when I don't get anything, when I don't get a corporate job, then I do for a research. Then he is an exception. But I'm talking many of us, we do a research like that. I took my academic degree at the age of 40, and after that I saw I was the only non-PhD person. I did a PhD then. Because I was forced to do a PhD. I was not a PhD after 40 years because I didn't find necessary. I was in corporate. So what I'm trying to say actually is that this is meant for those students who are actually glued to the research. This is meant for the people who are actually passionate about research. This is meant for the students who are committed for research. For them, it's a good recommendation. So if you're good for research, at the age of 18 plus 422, you can do a PhD. At the age of 22, you can start a PhD. Look at age. 18 years passing out of the school, 19 years to 22 years will pass a graduation. And if you're a brilliant student, you can do PhD immediately after that. That means by the age of 25, 26, you are a doctor. There cannot be a better recommendation than this for revolutionizing the country. And it is for policymakers to take advantage of the same and implement it properly. Anybody else has got it?
I have one question. As fragmentation about the boards we are talking about, like CBSE
ऑनलाइन के भी सवाल लेना ऑनलाइन के भी कुछ सवाल लेना मॉडरेशन
ICSE board and all, how we are going to accommodate all these things when we talk about the similarity across the country? Because every board, I am a Maharashtrian board, Maharashtra state board. I will be having a language barrier. I have to take the local contents. How actually we standardize this? Like CBSE board says that it should be at the national level. IB board says that it should be at the international level. And education system at the root level is rural. So how actually the policymakers are thinking?
See, intention of the policy is very clear, have only one board in India.
But is it going to stop?
It might take some time because the state boards are not managed by the state governments, and therefore it will not be easy for any central government to say all state governments will follow my line. It will be difficult because education is a concurrent list. So it might take time. But the intention of the policy is to have only one board in India. If we want a uniformity, have only one board in India. There will be no more 4 boards, only one board. And they are talking about NCRT will be the mother body, and within NCRT there will be SCRT. So they talk about formation of SCRT everywhere. So NCRT, SCRT, one board.
That is true, but at the same time,
It's a difficult process. There is a state government in India. I won't take the name. The state government in India, they have started cancelling the 4-year course and restarted the 3-year degree. Now we cannot do anything in India because till the time the education is in the concurrent list, this thing will continue to happen. Because you are in a concurrent list, so you can do whatever you like to do at the state level. Once it is a central list, you can't do. That's a problem. So India is a problem. I know it's a problem.
So you said that fragmentation of education or the fragmentation of the curriculum should not be there. But when we look at our Indian background, or like per se, the various languages are there, the rural people are there. So I feel that it should be there.
That's a debate. That's a question which is being raised. That's a question. That's a logical question is being raised. But the idea is the NEP doesn't say that NEP doesn't say that implement it from day one. What is the NEP is talking about is that you recognize that India is a diverse country. You recognize that India is a multicultural country, multi-religious country. You recognize that India is
rural as well as there is an urban population also, allied population also. Look at everything and then try to homogenize. Try to uniformize I mean to say the education system and education curriculum. Therefore, they're talking about initial recommendation very strong, 8th standard. They're talking about up to 5th standard, the medium of instruction should preferably only in the home language. Now, whether it's possible, I don't know. It's a very, first of all, 8th standard. That means up to 8th standard, the medium of instruction should be the home language. Home language means, does not mean whatever is speaking home. It means the state language or whatever the language. Mother tongue. So supposing we are talking about a Mumbai-based education, up to 8th standard, it should be taught in Marathi. That was original recommendation of NEP. The government didn't accept it. Government got 5th standard. If you look at, so there's a lot of divergence between the original recommendation and the government acceptance. Government told 8th standard will be too much. So we do it in 5th standard. So 5th standard also there are no textbooks. So I'm talking about the idea is good. Because if you look at what they're talking about early child education, what type of modification should be there. The innovations which are talking about Jadui Pitara, that's the name they have given. So if you look at the Jadui Pitara concept, what are the types of innovations will be there at the school level? And then what is being proposed? What is new SCRT of Maharashtra has already come out with the entire curriculum. Maharashtra has already come out with the entire curriculum. So if you look at the entire curriculum of Maharashtra today, it is a powerful curriculum. It's a very powerful curriculum. Now, can it really be implemented? There are doubts or opinion about it because as I told you that one section the teachers will not like it because they may feel redundant. You know, if we really talk about the 5th standard, let's say wherever we are sitting in a particular school, in the school Marathi medium starts, so 50% of the teachers might feel a little bit jittery. They'll be restless in terms of whether I will have a job or not. There will be a problem. I'm not telling there will not be a problem. The point is that if you want to bring any change, there has to be an earthquake. No change in the world has ever come without an earthquake. Now, whether the earthquake is of magnitude of 7.5 or 5.7, that is to be managed by that is to be managed by policy. But there has to be an earthquake. You cannot bring a change by not disturbing anybody. No, it's just not possible. I was in a commerce college very recently. The commerce college met me and they told me, sir, we are on the verge of losing jobs. I got expanded to arts. Learn also Sanskrit. What do I do? Because in a college where already there is a choice-based elective system, which is the first step of a multidisciplinary. You have a choice-based elective system. So in a commerce college, if there is a choice-based elective system and they are giving it to the non-commerce subjects, Sanskrit, Hindi, if they are giving these subjects a choice to the students, so some of the commerce students may not have a workload. So the new commerce students requirements will not be there in that college. Even the existing commerce college students, teachers also might lose the job because there is an university prescribed norm. You have to teach so many number of hours. So I don't, there is no way. The only way is that you also diversify to Hindi. You also diversify to Sanskrit. Do some online courses from Coursera. So I am NPTEL, a lot of courses which are available. Do some course. You also upskill. When the students are upskilling, you also upskill. In this competitive world, that's the only answer. Supposing in a school education they make it PhD mandatory. Or they make net mandatory. Set ka to value nahi hai. They make net mandatory. It has to be implemented by everybody. You can't say that I won't accept it. Now passing net is not easy. Getting qualified marks in net is a very difficult. I've seen many of my colleagues or whatever it is, they have taken years to get to pass net. It's not that easy.
But the time is not far enough. Well, they may make certain type of recommendation, even for a school education teacher, they may make certain qualifications are mandatory other than the BEd or other than DLD. So they may talk about making NET also mandatory. It may happen. Already there is a 4 years of migration in the school education. So they may make mandatory also. There is a possibility, I mean, it may not happen, but I'm talking there is a possibility. So people have to be ready with the changes, there is no other order. They may give a 3 years time. So one has to be ready for the challenges. When you are trying to create a different type of country, a different type of system has to be there. So one has to be ready for it. Some may be good, some may be bad, but that's part of life, and that's how life journey goes. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for an enlightening session. I'm pretty sure we had a glimpse of our classrooms and our classroom practices from where we begin to where we can reach. This surely was a time travel, not just to the past, to the present, and also what our future holds as teacher educators and training teachers. Thank you so much, sir.
It has been a fruitful and enlightening session from all our esteemed guests. We now will break for lunch, post which will commence with our paper presentation, and there are a few instructions which I will read out. As we are running little late, we'll be joining at 2 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and I request MI team to join at around 12:30. Yes,
Mauritius time.
Mauritius time, 12:30. There are a few instructions. Submit your presentation file at least 30 minutes before your session starts. Ensure compatibility with the conference equipments. Post lunch, join the breakout room you have been assigned to based on the sub-theme. If you find yourself in an unintended breakout room, leave and return to the main Zoom meeting to join the correct room. In the breakout room, wait for your turn to present. After presenting, remain in the meeting until all the presentations have concluded. We'll request everyone to proceed for lunch. We'll join sharply at 2 p.m. Breakout IFC and 12:30. Mauritius time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Divya ma'am, can you stop the recording?